Chapter 442. At this time, if someone asked Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, "What on earth does it feel like to hold a big boss sword?" Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal would definitely be speechless. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal would definitely be speechless. In fact, he had once thought of asking Wang Ling to borrow Jinka for a mission, but after the battle at Immortal Mansion, he had completely given up on the idea. That battle had ended in a one-sided crushing victory for Jinka, so this was a true, big boss sword. At that moment, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's heart trembled as he held Jinka. "Brother Ling, is this really okay?" Wang Ling retreated behind him and patted him lightly on the shoulder without saying anything. Then, Wang Ling directly returned to the ground and left the battle in the sky to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Evil Sword God. Why didn't he make a move? The reason was very simple. Because Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's encounter with Evil Sword God was a calamity that was destined to befall him, and he could only get through this calamity himself. "Brother Ling, I think we should settle this battle in a more peaceful way, like sitting down, having a cup of tea, and having a chat." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal held Jinka with a slightly helpless expression on his face. He felt that things had changed drastically in the last few days. To be honest, from the moment he held Jinka, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal already knew how this battle would end. At that moment, thanks to true immortal spirit power, Evil Sword God's injuries had mostly healed, but the blood on the corners of his mouth hadn't dried up. It could only be said that this was a genuine true immortal. Even in someone else's intrinsic spirit field, there was still spirit power as vast as the sea in his body. A wooden sword? No, there had to be a trap. Looking at the sword in Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's hand, the corners of Evil Sword God's mouth instantly twitched. Where did your friend get his sword? After those 2 slaps, Evil Sword God thought he already had an idea of the youngster's strength. He had seen the youngster pull this wooden sword out of the space fissure earlier, so he didn't need to think to know that this definitely wasn't an ordinary sword. As one of Wang Ling's best friends, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal also knew about Jinka's background. The young man in white thought for a moment, then replied, "This is a children's peachwood sword for teaching, flower and bird market, 998. Mongrel cultivator. Are you looking down on me?" Evil Sword God hovered in the air with heaven cleaving in his hand, evil purple sword chi swirling around the blade. He pointed his sword forward. "Do you know? Why was I given the title of 10-meter Sword God?" Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal? Wang Ling sat down cross-legged on the ground with his arms crossed and an indifferent expression on his face. He was aware of every movement in the intrinsic spirit field, and didn't need to look up to know what was going on. He had a rough idea of what Evil Sword God was trying to say. Although he had already mastered the Great Sword Dao spell and learned to use the power of Sword Dao, everyone had a different understanding of Sword Dao. 10-meter Sword God? Could it be that Evil Sword God had mastered a Sword Dao supreme skill that could kill within 10 meters? Wang Ling cupped his chin in his hand as he pondered this, when Evil Sword God laughed wildly. "True immortals can create intrinsic spirit fields, but my intrinsic spirit field is different from other true immortals. As long as it's within a range of 10 meters, it's an intrinsic spirit field that my venerable self has created with the power of Sword Dao. In other words, as long as my venerable self unleashes the power of Sword Dao to the fullest, I will be invincible in close combat within 10 meters. Wang Ling, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, this explanation caused everyone to fall into silence. The corners of Wang Ling's and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's lips twitched as they felt powerless to ridicule him. So, this was how he got his title of 10-meter Sword God? What kind of goddamn power of Sword Dao was this? Even if he was invincible in close combat beyond 10 meters, didn't that mean he could win as long as he watched from a distance? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help wiping at his sweat. As expected, this Evil Sword God wasn't a normal person. On the other side, Evil Sword God was very confident that he was invincible in close combat within 10 meters. He pointed the tip of his sword at Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. "Don't think about relying on long-range attacks to escape. My venerable self has perfected the teleportation technique for many years. Once I activate the power of Sword Dao, no one will be able to escape from my grasp. Evil Sword God said in a low voice, "Today, whether it's you or this friend of yours, I'll kill them all. Or this friend of yours, I'm going to obliterate them both. Then I'll extract your souls. I'll torture you in the cruelest way possible." He guessed that the young man in white whom he had killed previously might have had some kind of resurrection magic treasure that could be used to pay for his life. It wasn't that such magic treasures didn't exist in the cultivation world, but they were almost priceless. The young man had already used it once, so Evil Sword God was now very confident that as long as the young man in white died again like before, there was absolutely no possibility of him coming back to life. How could there be a magic treasure in this world that could resurrect infinitely? Furthermore, this person wasn't a demi-human. Infinite resurrection or whatever, it shouldn't exist. Mongrel Cultivator, die. Evil Sword God attacked, and the purple sword Qi lingering around the heaven-cleaving sword formed a pillar of Qi that pierced through his body. A skeleton-shaped phantom coalesced behind him. It was dozens of feet tall and covered in armor from head to toe. This was the heaven-cleaving sword's sword spirit, heaven-cleaving. This armor was formed from the power of Sword Dao, and Wang Ling could see through it at a glance. The sword spirit had already appeared, and this skeleton's armor was formed from the combination of the power of Sword Dao and true immortal spirit power. Evil Sword God had already unleashed his power of Sword Dao to the fullest, and he was in a completely unrestrained state. But the expression on his face didn't change in the slightest. From the moment he had summoned Jinka and tossed it to grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, the game was already over. Die! Evil Sword God grit his teeth as the power of Sword Dao surged all over his body. The air cracked open, and the space couldn't withstand the immense pressure of Evil Sword God's 100% power of Sword Dao at all. Holy shit! What should he do? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had never seen this kind of stance before. Given his current realm, it was impossible for him to fight a true immortal at his full strength. "This is my most powerful power, die!" Evil Sword God shouted. He held the heaven-cleaving sword in his hand, and the heaven-cleaving sword spirit behind him stretched out its hand toward the sky at the same time. A huge sword light lingered around the skeleton sword spirit skeleton, and the evil purple sword light turned into a light cannon that shot toward grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Destructive Death Ray. In an instant, fierce winds surged in all directions and space cracked. Everything in the path of the light cannon broke apart in an unstoppable manner. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal knew that he had the protection of the soul suppression ring and might not die, but if he was hit by this level of light cannon, he felt that there wouldn't even be a bloody mist left of him. There might not even be dregs left of him after this blast, but in the next moment, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal realized that his body actually moved on its own. Lord Jinka? Chapter 443. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hadn't expected this big shot's momentum to be so ferocious. Knowing that Evil Sword God was practically invincible within 10 meters, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal still pierced through the sky. In contrast to the surging evil purple sword Qi, Jinka led grenade-throwing Senior Immortal in taking advantage of the situation. There weren't any exaggerated light effects, and they were just covered in a faint brown spirit light that protected them like a Taoist robe. This sword stabbed out at the destructive death ray, which Evil Sword God had released, and drew a beautiful arc in the sky. Without any fancy sword skills, one man and one sword stabbed out elegantly. When the Peachwood sword's brown sword Qi touched the destructive death ray which had been released in the distance, an astonishing scene happened. That clearly weak brown sword Qi was like a miracle descending to the world as it followed the center of the destructive ray which was as thick as a horned dragon and forcibly split it apart. Heavenly flying immortal? Evil Sword God turned pale with astonishment. The young man in white's posture reminded him of a legendary sword technique. Turning complexity into simplicity and using small to catch big was a move specially used to counter large-scale attacks, and could render powerful offensive sword techniques like Destruction Ray ineffective. However, this was a godly sword technique which had long been lost. Whether it was his Shifu sword Immortal Fan Rui or the magnificent Immortal's depository of Buddhist texts, which was the largest depository in the cultivation circle today, the dossiers on this sword technique had long disappeared. There wasn't even a picture on the title page, let alone a record. But how could this miscellaneous cultivator in white use it? Evil Sword God pondered this, and could only think of one possibility. Unless the peachwood sword in this miscellaneous cultivator's hand was leading him into battle. If that was the case, a lot of things made sense. Evil Sword God exhaled, and the heaven-cleaving sword spirit behind him let out a long, shrill cry. True immortal spirit power rippled out in all directions, and the dozen or so palm trees in the school square in the intrinsic spirit field snapped. All the windows in the teaching building were shattered, and the entire building was destroyed by this storm of sound as easily as breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Why was it that every time an almighty entered a battlefield, they liked to make their presence felt on the buildings? Holding Jinka, grenade-throwing senior immortal sighed in his heart. Fortunately, this was only an intrinsic spirit field which had been modeled after Brother Ling's school. If this had really been No. 60 high school, that true immortal roar just now would have killed all the teachers and students in the school. Your friend's spirit sword is a little interesting. Evil Sword God licked his lips, and his long, sharp tongue changed color under the purple light of the evil death sword. Hee, I'll let you experience my venerable self's 10-meter sword Dao. Evil Sword God said in a deep voice. After that, the heaven-cleaving sword spirit power behind him said, Chi, and Sword Demon, is Yang said. Immediately after, a powerful sword principal gravitational force was generated. Like a planet, the runes leaped and converged into a circle of 10 meters. T mortal T, in Brother Ling God Ling sword, and suddenly, grenade-throwing mortal felt Chi. In the blink of an eye, he was pulled into the 10-meter circle of swordsmanship. Spirit, God. Instantly. Halo of weakness? Grenade-throwing senior immortal squeezed his hands and felt a little weak, but the brown spirit light that split off from Jinka's body very quickly diluted it and made him feel a little better. But he didn't make a sound. Instead, he clutched his chest with a shocked expression. What's this? Evil Sword God smiled. This is the holy void light that my venerable self's 10-meter sword defense brings. How is it? Do you feel weak all over? Can't use your strength? And you feel like you're sweating profusely? It's not just you. Even if my Shifu Fan Rui and senior brother Yi Jianchuan enter this circle, the same thing will happen. Grenade-throwing senior immortal, Wang Ling, Jinka, Evil Sword God, how is it? Are you afraid? If you can't dispel my halo of weakness, you won't be able to move an inch inside my 10-meter sword defense. Of course, my venerable self is invincible to begin with. But as soon as he said this, Jinka lured grenade-throwing senior immortal to attack again. Grenade-throwing senior immortal brandished his peachwood sword and drew a 6-pointed star in the air. Then he recited a spell as he held the sword in his left hand and formed a seal with his right. In that instant, a deep blue spirit light was emitted from the 6-pointed star seal inside the 10-meter sword defense. The air was dotted with stars, as if they were in a sea of stars. Under the illumination of that starlight, all the weakening effects faded away. This looked like just a minor spell, but Evil Sword God was astonished. 9-star skies? Another legendary sword skill? Evil Sword God narrowed his eyes, greatly shaken in his heart. This was a legendary sword skill used to purify debuffs, and it had also been lost. He had actually used 2 legendary sword skills in a row? Evil Sword God suddenly felt a little tired. Is this the 9-star skies? Evil Sword God asked. That's right, this is the 9-star skies. Grenade-throwing senior immortal replied. Grenade-throwing senior immortal replied. After hearing Wang Ling's telepathic message, he now had a basic understanding of this sword technique. Furthermore, this sword art is also the highest level of the 9th level of the 9-star skies, Chendong art. Hearing this, Evil Sword God's expression instantly darkened. This was actually the highest level of the 9th level of the 9-star skies. No wonder it had been able to dispel his holy void light so easily. At that moment, evil sword god suddenly felt like he was doubting life. This is the grenade-throwing senior immortal gripped his peachwood sword. At that moment, a voice that didn't belong to him at all came out of his mouth. It was Jinka's voice. His pupils shone with brown spirit light as he pointed at evil sword god. Commoner, have you ever seen a sword skill that descends from the heavens? Wang Ling looked up at this scene. As evil sword god had said, everyone had a different understanding of the great sword Dao spell, and each person grasped a unique characteristic. If evil sword god's sword Dao characteristic could be said to be invincible within 10 meters, then Wang Ling's sword Dao characteristic could be said to be omniscient. All the sword Dao in the world was a part of it, and there wasn't a sword technique that Wang Ling didn't know. It was just that he was too lazy to use it. It was just that he was too lazy to use them on a daily basis, because he could deal with all the enemies he had faced with just his fists and feet. There were many times when Wang Ling didn't think it was worth brandishing a sword or a spear. Wang Ling's great sword Dao characteristic was that he was proficient in everything. As evil sword god's personal spirit sword, Wang Ling had already passed on all the sword skills he had mastered to Jinka through the spirit sword contract. Chapter 444. When grenade-throwing senior immortal's pupils shone with brown spirit light, his aura instantly changed. Evil sword god stood within the 10-meter sword circle, which was supposed to be an invincible domain. He had deliberately fused the intrinsic spirit field with his sword Dao. Although this greatly reduced the range of the intrinsic spirit field, the advantage was that he didn't have to fear fighting in someone else's intrinsic spirit field. So when Wang Ling's intrinsic spirit field was activated, evil sword god had no fear at all. The greatest value of the intrinsic spirit field was that it could use the home field to suppress the enemy's ability to absorb spirit power and at the same time suppress spirit power. Evil sword god thought that he was a genius at combining his intrinsic spirit field with his own sword Dao. At the very least, within this 10-meter sword circle, he was invincible even if he was in someone else's domain. But now, facing this young man in white, he actually felt a terrifying sense of oppression. This aura made him feel stifled. "Who on earth are you?" Evil sword god asked, but in fact he already had a guess in his heart. He suspected that the sword spirit of the peachwood sword had probably attached itself to this young man in white. But what kind of operation was this? The legendary unity of man and sword? Evil sword god felt that the situation was already a little beyond his understanding. When it came to sword Dao, he felt that there was no one in the world who had a more thorough understanding of it than he did. He wasn't a venerated immortal, but he had comprehended the great sword Dao spell and mastered the 10-meter sword Dao. He had also been a genius at fusing this 10-meter sword Dao with the intrinsic spirit field to form an invincible domain. However, this extremely powerful sword Dao of man and sword as one should only be able to display such a fusion method when the compatibility between the spirit sword and its master had reached the highest state. Even for his current self, his rapport with the heaven-cleaving sword was still quite lacking. Because the heaven-cleaving sword hadn't originally belonged to him, and he had seized it midway, evil sword god squinted and stared suspiciously at the youngster on the ground. This peachwood sword clearly belonged to this youngster. How could even his friend become one with the sword? He stared at Wang Ling with a dark expression. Then, very quickly, the corners of his mouth twitched, because he noticed that the young man wasn't paying attention to the battle in the sky at all. He was sitting cross-legged while holding a book and writing something. Evil sword god used his purple investigative demon eyes to activate the horizon eye technique, and then saw the name of the book, one talisman and one seal script. Even the fine print could be seen clearly, the Ministry of Education's designated practice textbook for senior high school talisman class, meticulously compiled by hundreds of experts, leading in sales for 60 consecutive years. Evil sword god's face twitched. Right at this moment, he saw the white-robed young man who had been possessed by the peachwood sword spirit shake his hand. The peachwood sword in his hand had already turned into light particles and completely dissipated. This was the true unity of man and sword. When man and sword became one, the body of the sword would also disappear and become one with the man. With his body as the hilt and his hand as the edge, his entire body was filled with sword chi. This 10-meter sword circle should have been an invincible domain exclusive to him, but evil sword god was aghast to find that the situation had actually reversed. After man and sword became one, the brown sword chi that the young man in white gave off was truly terrifying, as if he was the king of gods. Wherever that sword chi passed, the purple sword chi of the heaven-cleaving sword retreated. There was no way to think about this situation normally, because it didn't make sense at all. This was his 10-meter sword circle, which he had set up with the power of sword Tao, and he had tried it time and time again. However, in today's duel, evil sword god had a feeling that the power of sword Tao, which he had been able to use with ease in the past, didn't seem to be listening to him anymore, and the most frightening thing was that he felt an immense pressure. He had already been floating inside his 10-meter sword circle for a very long time, and there was no movement at all. It wasn't that he was pretending to be aloof. It was that he couldn't move at all. Commoner? Jinka's voice rang out from grenade-throwing senior immortal's body. His hands were behind his back, and his whole body was covered in brown sword light. Even inside this 10-meter sword circle, his aura was overwhelming. Evil sword god was horrified. This voice actually made him feel fear from the depths of his soul. The cold sweat on his back instantly soaked through his Taoist robe and stuck to his body. He couldn't even speak and could only use the sword spirit contract to order the heaven-cleaving sword's skeleton sword spirit to communicate. The skeleton's voice was very deep, like an emissary from hell. "Or you, Ling, don't like trouble. Must quickly resolve." Jinka, who was inside grenade-throwing senior immortal's body, completely ignored the other party's question. In the next moment, grenade-throwing senior immortal took a step forward, and in a split second, the space inside the 10-meter sword circle actually cracked inch by inch. All the evil sword chi seemed to have been purified and disappeared. It wasn't just the heaven-cleaving sword's skeleton sword spirit, evil sword god was also stupefied. His 10-meter sword Tao had been disintegrated by this one step. No, rather than disintegrate, evil sword god felt that it was more appropriate to say that it had been nullified. What on earth was this peachwood sword spirit? Evil sword god frowned deeply. The power of sword Tao that he was most proud of had actually been completely ineffective in front of the other party. The most frightening thing was that until now, he still hadn't figured out the origin of this sword spirit. Humans were a species that feared the unknown to begin with. Even true immortals couldn't escape this. Evil sword god thought that he had already reached the pinnacle of sword Tao in this world, but Jinka's appearance now had completely disrupted his state of mind. For the first time, there was fear in his eyes, and his mind was restless, and it was hard for him to calm down. The last time he had been this disturbed was when he had personally killed his Shifu, sword immortal Fan Ru. Why? In the last few hundred years, he had relied on his own strength to prove that he was a top expert in sword Tao. But why had someone who could be said to have broken the rules suddenly appeared? This youngster on the ground who was doing practice questions, and this unknown sword spirit who had recognized him as its master? Who the hell were these two guys? Evil sword god felt that this was even more amazing than that bunch of Nanhan guys fooling around on the ice rink, blindly judging other countries' contestants for breaking the rules, and forcing themselves to win the championship. Nowadays, could it be that there really were referees who didn't return to their seats? The 10-meter sword defense had been nullified, and the skeleton sword spirit's figure returned to its normal size. It's all over. In the next moment, evil sword god watched in alarm as the figure of the young man in white instantly disappeared in front of him. Where was he? Evil sword god's face was nervous, because his purple investigative demon eyes hadn't caught sight of Jinka's figure. In the next moment, there was a loud bang, and a figure descended from the sky with astonishing pressure. This was that sword technique descending from the sky. Chapter 445. The sky was very high. Jinka, who had possessed grenade-throwing senior immortal's body, was 10,000 meters up in the air, and his whole body was surrounded by a brown sword light. A huge pressure descended from the sky, instantly imprisoning his body, preventing him from casting any spells. Evil Sword God was horrified. He hadn't expected this sword technique, which had fallen from the sky, to actually have the effect of sealing a spirit. The instant he dove down from the sky, the pressure grew stronger and stronger. When Evil Sword God fell from 10,000 meters to 5,000 meters, this pressure not only made it impossible for him to cast spells, it also made it impossible for him to block it. His entire body was directly hammered into the ground, and he lay on the ground like a toad. His head, limbs, and torso, every part of his body was firmly suppressed. Evil Sword God already couldn't remember the last time he had kissed the ground at such a close distance. With him at the center, the ground started to crack. Evil Sword God couldn't breathe as his whole body sank deep into the ground, as if he had fallen into a swamp, layer by layer. It was actually going to lose? Evil Sword God's whole body froze. If it wasn't for the protection of the heaven-cleaving sword spirit, he might have ended up in an even more tragic state. What kind of pressure was this? Even a true immortal would find it hard to bear such enormous pressure. The heaven-cleaving sword spirit was also pressed into the ground like a toad, and the man and the servant maintained the same posture, which looked very comical. Unable to speak, Evil Sword God could only send a telepathic message, so nervous that even his stupid tone disappeared. Heaven-cleaving. What on earth is this sword spirit? The skeleton sword spirit? I don't know either. Evil Sword God. As they conversed, the Sky Splitter Sword's skeleton sword spirit's armor, which had been formed from Sword Dao power, began to crack inch by inch in the face of this unstoppable sharpness. 4,000 meters, 3,000 meters, 2,000 meters. The pressure was getting greater and greater. When they were 1,000 meters from the ground, Evil Sword God and his sword spirit had already sunk several dozen meters into the ground. Master and servant couldn't move at all. Evil Sword God grit his teeth, separated a purple investigative demon eye, and used the sword spirit contract to share their vision. The purple investigative demon eye took in the entire scene in the sky at that moment. Evil Sword God thought that it was probably a scene he would never forget for the rest of his life. In the sky, the sword technique that the unknown sword spirit had unleashed after attaching itself to the white-robed young man's body had turned into a gigantic dark golden sword of light. It descended from the sky like a god king, bringing with it a destructive pressure. Wherever the giant sword of light passed, the space of the intrinsic spirit field began to collapse. However, Wang Ling's intrinsic spirit field's self-recovery ability was too strong. The destructive power of this giant sword of light was immense, but the intrinsic spirit field's self-recovery ability was just on par with this destructive power. As a result, the destructive power of this giant sword of light could be completely contained in his intrinsic spirit field and wouldn't affect the real world. Otherwise, with the power of this sword, all of Songhai City was going to be destroyed. Absolute suppression. Absolute spirit sealing. There was no way to resist. With the sight-sharing ability of the purple investigative demon eye, the skeleton sword spirit was finally able to see the origin of this sword. Sweat trickled down the expressionless face of the skeleton as he spoke telepathically to Evil Sword God. World-annihilating sword. Evil Sword God looked like he had eaten godly dung. Annihilating. World-annihilating sword. The skeleton sword spirit was in despair. Swordmaster, we're done for. Don't play with Echo at this time, Evil Sword God. He's stuttering. The skeleton sword spirit. It was very obvious that neither master nor servant had expected to actually provoke such an existence. World-annihilating sword. This wasn't a characteristic, but the supreme secret of the great Sword Dao spell. However, in today's world, apart from the primogenitor of Dao creation of the 3,000 great spells, the skeleton sword spirit could only think of one person who could wield the power of Sword Dao in the great Sword Dao spell to this level. Could it be? At that moment, the skeleton sword spirit, heaven-cleaving, was genuinely sweating. My king. He didn't even dare shout out his name, because it was a taboo for all sword spirits. The might of the world-annihilating sword was unstoppable. The heaven-cleaving sword spirit sensed the air getting closer and closer to annihilation. There were probably less than 10 seconds left, and both he and evil sword god would be reduced to ashes here and now. The might of the world-annihilating sword. This was the supreme secret that was enough to contend with world-defying magic weapons and divine weapons. All 3,000 great spells had their own profound meanings, but very few people could use them. In that instant, the heaven-cleaving sword spirit's thoughts flew as he thought of a lot. That was my king. The embodiment of the great sword Tao spell, the master of sword spirits. The heaven-cleaving sword spirit had never expected that he would actually recognize a youngster as his master. He recalled the domineering scene when the youngster had sent evil sword god flying with 2 slaps. The heaven-cleaving sword spirit felt that he had miscalculated. He should have stopped this battle earlier. But right now, he had no other choice. As a sword spirit, his job was to protect his master. No matter how evil his master was or what karma he had committed, he had to abide by the spirit of the contract. The moment the world-annihilating sword was about to fall, the skeleton body of the heaven-cleaving sword spirit activated the Protect Master Spirit Blade agreement with the sword spirit contract. The heaven-cleaving sword spirit was well aware that evil sword god would definitely die under this sword, but if he sacrificed his life to protect his master, there might still be a chance of survival. Now, they didn't have much time left. In this moment of crisis, the heaven-cleaving sword spirit didn't hesitate at all. This was a life in exchange for a life. As a sword spirit, heaven-cleaving abided by the contract and didn't think that he had done anything wrong. Because of the spirit sword contract, the moment heaven-cleaving made his decision, evil sword god already knew what on earth he wanted to do. Heaven-cleaving. Although he had seized this sword from his Shifu, it had been with him for 100 years, and he had long since developed feelings for it. The second before his world-annihilating sword fell, the deep eye shadow on evil sword god's body, as well as the evil pattern that stretched from the back of his neck to his entire back, faded away. The master and servant closed their eyes and accepted the punishment of the world-annihilating sword. However, the pain they had expected didn't happen. The giant sword of light fell without any sound or even an explosion. Wang Ling closed one talisman, one seal, and stood up from the ground. He brushed the dust off his body, and a gust of wind brushed past his black and white short sleeves to reveal his smooth collarbone. The world-annihilating sword had a variety of effects. One was world-annihilating punishment, which was a great killing move that could truly destroy everything. The other was world-annihilating purification, which was a power that could strip away the power of sword Tao. For the sword spirit who had loyally protected his master, Wang Ling ultimately chose to let him off the hook. As for evil sword god, stripping him of the power of sword Tao that he was so proud of was already the best punishment. And Jinka obeyed Wang Ling's will. After grenade-throwing senior immortal recovered, he was now at the edge of the deep pit in the heart of the intrinsic spirit field. Looking inside, he saw the heaven-cleaving sword spirit and evil sword god, master and servant, lying in the pit like a human pyramid. Grenade-throwing senior immortal, you, Wang Ling. Grenade-throwing senior immortal looked at Wang Ling behind him. Brother Ling, what do we do now? Wang Ling, what else could he do? Chapter 446. It wasn't that grenade-throwing senior immortal hadn't felt anything when Jinka had possessed him. In that moment, he had almost had the misconception that he was sharing a body with a big shot. It was a very wonderful feeling that was hard to describe in detail. In any case, he just felt that he had become stronger. Through this incident, grenade-throwing senior immortal's definition of strength had been elevated to a new level. It turned out that in this world, even if you didn't become bald, you could still become strong. As long as they had the big boss in their hands, there was nothing to fear. In the end, when Jinka attached himself to grenade-throwing senior immortal and took out the world-annihilating sword, grenade-throwing senior immortal was taken aback by its effect. This was the highest level of profundity in swordsmanship, and it was comparable to a strike from the heavens. Who in the world would be able to withstand it? Although grenade-throwing senior immortal hadn't relied on his own strength to display this kind of heaven-defying profound meaning of sword Tao, even if he had to pay the price with his life, He felt that it would be perfect to be able to use his own body to display this kind of heaven-defying profound meaning of Sword Dao. Because in theory, using the profound meaning of Sword Dao like the world-annihilating sword was not part of his life achievements. Thus, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was still reminiscing about the battle just now. For many people, it was rare for them to have such an opportunity to be possessed by a big boss in battle. However, once they did, they would definitely benefit immensely. When it came to Sword Dao, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was originally just a minor cultivator. His main and specialty were actually hidden weapons and body techniques. But this time, Jinka had attached itself to Wang Ling's body and gone on a rampage at the level of a big shot. Even though it had already left his body, that memory was still there. If he were to go back and study this memory, it would be of great help to improve his Sword Dao. Moreover, it was highly likely that in a short period of time, his proficiency and various techniques in the way of the sword would even surpass his main cultivation of hidden weapons and body arts. In a situation of equal strength, hidden weapons were indeed a very good method. They could be used to attack or defend, and could even have a surprising effect in a battle. However, in a situation like today where the difference in cultivation level was overwhelming, these few sky-quaking thunders were simply not enough. This was the limitation of using hidden weapons. Standing on the edge of the deep pit, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal rubbed his chin in deep thought. A post-battle summary was necessary. In this era of peace, where would there be so many fights for them to fight? After that, the scene in front of them dissipated, and the master and servant who were originally in the deep pit maintained the posture of a human pyramid and reappeared on the ground of the real world. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal knew that Wang Ling had already cancelled the intrinsic spirit field. He looked around and found that the location was quite remote. It was the side of a mountain road in the suburbs. They actually fought in a place like this. Fortunately, there were very few people here, and everywhere Evil Sword God had passed, all the electronic equipment had been destroyed by his evil sword chi. Wang Ling had already sent Ajua a text message. At that moment, Ajua was on his way here at top speed, while Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was waiting on the side of the mountain road on the outskirts to deal with the aftermath. After a dozen or so seconds, the skeleton sword spirit of the Heaven Splitter disappeared. After the battle just now, the sword spirit's spiritual energy had been completely used up. It was no longer able to maintain its virtual form. As for Evil Sword God, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal wasn't the least bit worried. The world-annihilating sword had already robbed him of all his power of Sword Dao. Furthermore, for a very, very long time to come, the world-annihilating sword's spirit sealing effect would continue on Evil Sword God. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal turned around and cupped his fists in thanks to Wang Ling. Brother Ling, it's all thanks to you this time. But before he could finish speaking, Wang Ling's figure turned into a breeze and dissipated. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal? At that moment, a figure approached from a short distance away. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal gazed in that direction with delight. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Brother Loopy Toad, why are you here? Loopy Toad replied, my master is revising, so he asked me to come take a look. This place is too remote, and I followed your scent for a while before I found this place. Revising? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was blank. Then the one before, Loopy Toad, of course it's my master's clone. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help wiping at his sweat. This was too brutal. Although Evil Sword God had been defeated by that final world-annihilating sword. But those two slaps from Wang Ling had been genuine. It was just a clone. He had been able to beat Evil Sword God to the point where he couldn't take care of himself with just a slap, and he had even activated the intrinsic spirit field in passing. As expected, the most abnormal person next to him was Brother Ling. Too scary. Loopy Toad looked at Evil Sword God's corpse lying on the ground, and it also felt a little horrified. On the way here, it had seen the scene through the soul pet contract, which shared vision. Then, it had seen a great sword of light stuck in Evil Sword God's head, world-annihilating sword. Loopy Toad felt that a Sword Dao fanatic like Evil Sword God should be able to die in peace after being stabbed by this kind of skill. Loopy Toad sighed and looked around. Tisk, it's a little dark around here. Furthermore, this place was a little remote, and it was a little worried that Audra wouldn't be able to find this place smoothly. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal looked at Loopy Toad. It's okay. Although all the electronic products nearby were destroyed when evil sword god's demonic nature flared up, Brother Loopy Toad, you're here now. But now that you're here, Brother Loopy Toad, it's just the right time for light. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, did Brother Loopy Toad not notice? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, has Brother Loopy Toad not noticed? Loopy Toad, discover what? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, your dog fur is fluorescent. Loopy Toad, at the same time, roughly half an hour after the incident, Audra had already arrived at Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's location. The street lights near the mountain road had been destroyed. As far as the eye could see, it was a vast expanse of darkness. Actually, as early as 2 hours ago, Songhai City's police center had already received numerous reports from the public. He claimed that there was a power outage in the area where he lived, and that all electronic products were malfunctioning. At that time, Audra already had a bad feeling. After that, another call came in to report that someone was throwing smoke grenades in the sky above Songhai City, covering a distance of 5,000 li in dense fog. Although this fog had been thrown out on the outskirts of the city, it was still quite troublesome to deal with. Because they didn't know the specific composition of the fog, the traffic police patrolling in the sky didn't dare approach it at all. At present, this foggy area had been sealed off, and no one was allowed to approach. Moreover, they were doing the urgent dispersal work. That night, Audra's WeChat moments was very lively. Warden Liang of Songhai First Prison, as well as the chiefs and deputy chiefs of the cultivation police stations in various districts, were all complaining one after another. While Audra consoled them in his WeChat moments, he also made speculations. He speculated that the series of reactions tonight might be related to the same thing. After experiencing several major incidents, it was as if Audra could sense it in advance each time something big was about to happen, and he felt muddle-headed all day long, as if he was uneasy. Starting from this morning, he had felt this way again. And it was very strong. So that night, Audra sat in his office at the General Administration of 100 schools in Songhai City and quietly watched the activity in his WeChat moments, not getting off work for a long time. And sure enough, not long after the series of reports, Chapter 447. This was due to a massive power outage and the failure of all kinds of electronic equipment in the area. As Audra sped up to the scene, he browsed through the comments online. They were full of wailing voices. In any case, Songhai City government would definitely have to pay a large sum of money in compensation. No matter what, they couldn't let the people suffer for nothing. But at the same time, Audra was also very curious about what on earth had happened to cause such a big impact. Deputy Director Zhong Lang and Audra were sitting in a car, and the driver in the driver's seat approached the destination bit by bit according to the location Wang Ling had sent him earlier. Brother Zhua, what on earth happened this time? Something big, we'll know when we get to the scene. Audra's answer was ambiguous. But based on all the signs, Audra felt that it was most likely a fight between immortals. Furthermore, the person who had been defeated by his Shifu this time was probably pretty powerful. Zhong Lang pursed his lips. But logically speaking, this matter doesn't involve the school or the students. Aren't we crossing the line by intervening like this? What if we get reported by other departments? Don't panic. Audra shook his head and said, first of all, this matter will definitely affect the students. Zhong Lang? Audra. It's almost time for the midterm exams. Now that there's such a massive power outage, the children will definitely need to study for the exams. Actually, I've already received a lot of complaints in the office just now. As guardians of the motherland's young seedlings, we have to verify what on earth is going on for the children. Zhong Lang was stunned. How could this be related? The point was that he had taken a look at the school forum and Tieba just now, and the group of children inside were cheering. A lot of homework now had to be done on the computer, so what did a massive power outage mean? For many students, Their first reaction wasn't to regret not being able to finish their homework, but to rejoice that they didn't have to hand in homework tomorrow. As for the complaints you mentioned, saying this, Ajwa was silent for a moment. He knew that the complaints Zhong Lang was talking about were definitely real. Because he had been involved in all kinds of major events in the last 2 months, Ajwa's popularity had been rising too quickly. All the major newspapers were scrambling to report news about him and related deeds. There was one every 2 days, basically without a break. Furthermore, Ajwa's position was related to education, so he needed news full of positive energy and worth learning from. These days, when 1 or 2 good-looking young men or women appeared in the various border defense forces, military camps, and traffic police teams, they would compete to be featured in the headlines and trending searches. It fully stimulated the people's enthusiasm to join the army. By the same logic, Secretary Dakang, the highest leader of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools, also believed that a role model should be promoted in the field of education, with more publicity, more reporting, and a spokesperson for education. And Ajwa was a very good tool to use. Moreover, when it came to looks, Ajwa actually wasn't bad. Although he couldn't be compared to those movie stars, his face was still fair and clean. He had a natural scholarly look, pure and untainted. For a government agency like theirs, even if they were from different departments, the competition was still very fierce. When people were at the cusp of the storm, there would always be jealous people who wanted to drag you down. But Ajwa had always felt that reporting was actually reasonable. It could be considered a form of competition, although the methods used were a little underhanded. Ajwa sighed and then smiled. There will definitely be complaints, but they will basically be blocked. They can't be sent in at all. Zhong Lang, But 2 days ago I received a lot. Ajwa, that was arranged by Secretary Dakang. All the letters of complaint sent to the headquarters will eventually be forwarded to us. The secretary said that this is for internal digestion, and to read more letters of complaint is also a process of self-study and self-reflection. It turned out that this had already been approved long ago. Realization suddenly dawned on Zhong Lang. 3 big words emerged in his heart: big boss, society, and can't be provoked. The car slowly approached its destination. The mountain road was located in a remote area, and the driver had in fact already reached the approximate location. But they still took a detour here for a long time. Of course, it was entirely thanks to Loopy Toad's outstanding fluorescent green dog fur that they were able to find grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and the others smoothly in the end. In this dark environment, it looked like a lump of green from a distance, both pleasing to the eye and eye-catching. The headlights of the car were facing the crime scene, and Loopy Toad's eyes were a little uncomfortable, so it simply circled around and hid behind grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Because it noticed that there were other people besides Ajwa, it instantly became a little vigilant. Greetings, Senior Immortal. Ajwa and Zhong Lang got out of the car, and Ajwa stepped forward to greet them. It wasn't until then that Zhong Lang realized that the person who had exposed this incident this time was actually the famous, great death-courting senior in the cultivation circle. Now, Zhong Lang understood a little why this matter had caused such a ruckus. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal cupped his fists in return. Hello, Brother Zhua. I'll have to trouble you again this late at night. Ajwa, what are you saying, Senior Immortal? I'm already used to it. Loopy Toad, Zhong Lang, Ajwa. But can Senior Immortal tell me what on earth happened? Previously, he had only given him a location, and Ajwa actually wasn't very clear about the whole story from beginning to end. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal pointed at the young man lying on the ground. Do you see this person? His background is very unusual, but he's no less a first-class criminal than the old devil. He's committed countless crimes, and his cultivation is even higher than the old devil's. He has a very deep connection with General E. Hearing this, Ajwa and Zhong Lang's faces turned pale. To be able to have a connection with the 10 founding generals, it was obvious how deep the waters behind this were. Furthermore, there was one thing that both Ajwa and Zhong Lang were extremely astonished. This young man's cultivation was even higher than the old devil's? Ajwa sucked in a cold breath. Senior Immortal. this person is peak true immortal? Grenade-throwing senior immortal nodded. That's right, and he has already cultivated a heavenly Tao, although your Shifu confiscated it. Ling Jinren's warm reminder, students who haven't finished their winter break homework, hurry up. Chapter 448. He had already cultivated the heavenly Tao. Both Ajua and Zhonglang had stupefied expressions on their faces. Although they were only at the gold core stage, it did not mean that they did not know what the heavenly Tao meant. This was something that could only be touched upon after becoming a perfected immortal. Even many soul formation cultivators felt a deep sense of distance from it, let alone them. Looking at the young man lying dead on the ground, he looked around and realized that his Shifu Wang Ling wasn't here. However, the location had indeed been personally sent over by his master. Thus, Ajua quickly came to a conclusion. Combined with what grenade-throwing senior immortal had said before, if this young man was a true immortal big shot who had already cultivated a heavenly Tao. Given grenade-throwing senior immortal's strength, there was no way he could have dealt with him, so it was very likely that Shifu had left after defeating the young man, leaving grenade-throwing senior immortal behind to help Wang Ling deal with the aftermath. Ajua knew that his Shifu liked to keep a low profile, so every time he cleaned up some evil force, he would immediately call him over to deal with the aftermath and then give all the credit to him. But here came the problem. This was a true immortal big shot. Even if Wang Ling, Zhonglang and grenade-throwing senior immortal were added to the mix, if the three of them ran into a cultivator big shot of this level, wouldn't they be killed with one slap? Looking at the young man on the ground, Ajua felt his balls ache. This was not a good scapegoat. Since he was a scapegoat, the way he did it had to be scientific. Ajua remembered that the last time they had captured the master of Immortal Mansion, the other party had been an itinerant immortal, but in any case, all the experts in the chat group had joined forces to besiege him. Although there seemed to be a slight disparity in strength, at least it wouldn't be too abrupt. But now, a true immortal big shot had been defeated just like that. If it was only because the three of them had worked together to defeat it, it would be hard to convince the crowd. What is Brother Zhuo worried about? Zhonglang asked. I've thought about it. It's not very appropriate for us to interfere in this matter publicly. Ajua rubbed his chin and said, how about this? Little Zhong, contact Warden Liang for me and let him handle this. Zhonglang nodded obediently. Yes, Brother Zhuo. It can be said that Brother Zhuo played a huge role in catching such a vicious criminal. Why would you push the blame onto someone else? Grenade-throwing senior immortal smiled. Ajua sighed. This walk is too heavy, grenade-throwing senior immortal. To put it bluntly, it was still a problem of the difference in their realms. Ajua was actually quite a self-aware person. There were some scapegoats he could take and some he couldn't. When he could be half as strong as his master, he would be able to take the blame. But right now, he was actually feeling a little diffident. But then again, true monarch, I don't feel any spiritual power from this person. Is he really that strong? Ajua asked. Grenade-throwing senior immortal, Brother Zhuo, there's no need to worry. This person has already sealed his spirit and is now no different from an ordinary person. He could arrest them without worry. If he was really worried, he could request the higher-ups to use the spirit shackles. Also, I suggest that Brother Zhuo contact General Yi to handle this matter. Ajua nodded. Senior Immortal is right. After all, it involved the 10 founding generals, so he had to be careful. But true sovereign, come to think of it, who exactly is this person? 10-meter sword god Chen Nanxian, self-proclaimed, evil sword god. Realization dawned on Ajua and Zhonglang's faces. Whoosh! Grenade-throwing senior immortal was also very surprised. You've actually heard of him? Ajua. No. Grenade-throwing senior immortal. It actually made sense that they didn't know Evil Sword God. After all, it had already been a long time, and Evil Sword God's identity was directly related to General Yi's. Thus, while the higher-ups had been secretly searching for clues on Evil Sword God all this time, the news that had been circulating in the media as well as the reports on Evil Sword God back then had already been sealed. Grenade-throwing senior immortal believed that if he went to the library now, the daily newspaper that had published evil sword god's exploits back then would definitely be gone. Ajua and Zhonglang were still very young, so it was normal that they didn't know. Furthermore, Grenade-throwing senior immortal felt that even if evil sword god was mentioned in the chat group, there wouldn't be many people who would have a rough idea. If Taoist Guang hadn't personally fought him back then, Grenade-throwing senior immortal's lead on evil sword god would have been limited to that newspaper from back then. But after today's incident, Grenade-throwing senior immortal started to have a whole new understanding of the gap between realms. Evil sword god was really too ferocious. If Taoist Guang hadn't been a true immortal back then, it would have been hard for him to escape. By the time Ajua and Ajua arrived, it was already close to 10 o'clock. After that, Grenade-throwing senior immortal and Ajua dealt with evil sword god's matter until the latter half of the night. Songhai First Prison. Warden Liang and his men had escorted evil sword god here overnight. Because of the world-annihilating sword's spirit sealing effect, evil sword god had been unconscious all this time. Warden Liang had directly put him in spirit shackles and sent him to the special cell. The cell door opened, and two prison guards carried evil sword god in one after the other. Warden Liang followed behind, sighing in his heart. In less than a few months, this was already the third one. Warden Liang looked at Devil Emperor Guapai, who was meditating, and Qing Yu, the master of Immortal Mansion. They had caught a Fatten before, then an archer, and now this new warrior. The lineup for the team battle was almost complete. Warden Liang felt that he could perhaps apply for some funding to expand the special cell. The old devil and Qing Yu, the master of Immortal Mansion, were still in trial. It seemed like they had been in custody for a long time, but in fact, they had only been in prison for less than 2 months. In the end, before they could get used to it, a new one had arrived. Old Liang, who's this? The old devil looked up and sneered when he saw that a new person had been sent in. He was still using Jiang Liuyue's body, and when he spoke, his aged voice was out of place. But that couldn't be helped, because the old devil was now wearing the spirit shackles, and it was impossible for him to switch his body back while his spirit was sealed. Furthermore, the higher-ups were afraid that something might happen if they removed the spirit seal and replaced the old devil with an artificial body, so they could only make do with it for now. As for the master of Shadowstream Jiang Liyue, her soul had already been transferred from the stone ghost mask to the artificial body. She would soon be locked up in this special cell. Soon, there would be another assassin in the lineup for the team battle. No comment for the time being, but I advise you not to provoke him. Warden Liang raised his hand and had someone put evil sword god on an empty bed. The two of you behave. After that, he left with several prison guards, and with a bang, the cell door was firmly shut. 2 minutes later, Qing Yu raised his eyes and glanced at the old devil next to him. Devil Emperor, what do you say? The old devil chuckled. Of course we have to wake him up. For every newcomer who had just been sent to prison, training was an essential process. On this side, evil sword god was still unconscious. 2 figures approached from the left and right in the special cell. Then there were 2 crisp papa sounds. Chapter 449. Although evil sword god had been arrested, given his identity, the matter had been suppressed in the end. As for the abnormal large-scale power outage in the area and the malfunctioning of electronic equipment, Songhai City's Electric Power Bureau finally took responsibility for it. The next day, the accident notice posted clearly stated that the cause of the outage was an equipment error. In the end, only those who had personally been involved would know what had really happened. That night, not long after Evil Sword God had been taken into custody, Adjua received calls from 2 people. The first was from his old leader, Secretary Deng. Hello, little Zhuazi. Adjua had already been overwhelmed by the old secretary's familiar address at the beginning, but now he was completely used to it. Adjua nodded. It's me, Secretary. On the other end of the line, Secretary Dekong's tone was a little meaningful. I've always felt that you had an expert lurking around you. This time, you were able to capture Evil Sword God completely. Ajwa was stunned when he heard this. If Shifu knew that he hadn't taken responsibility for this, he would definitely hate him. Secretary Dakong, it's not like that. Ajwa was about to defend himself when Secretary Dakong's voice rang out again on the other end of the line. Don't be afraid. As long as you can contribute to society, I don't care if you have 1 or 2 experts by your side. But to be able to capture this evil sword god, I'm afraid that the senior you invited definitely isn't weak, and might not be weaker than me or old E at all. Secretary, alright, no need to explain anymore. I understand you. On the other end of the line, Secretary Dakong nodded slightly and said unhurriedly, everyone has secrets, and people without secrets can't live on. You've won glory for our educational cause, and now you're a role model for all children. I should be the one thanking you for this. Later, if old E calls, directly push it to me and say that I was the one who invited the senior behind you. That way, he won't run his mouth behind my back. Listening to the phone, Ajwa suddenly felt a little stupefied. It had originally seemed like something that couldn't be explained clearly, but had actually been inexplicably resolved just like that. Given old Yi's temperament, I'm guessing that he definitely won't be able to resist coming to Songhai City when he hears about this. He might even call you. Let's get this straight first, this is more important. Old E is a very shrewd person. At this point, Secretary Dakong couldn't help but laugh out loud. Previously, he, old Jiang, and I made a bet to see who could catch Chen Nanshan first. In the end, I never thought that I would be the one who picked it up. Little Zhuazi, you've made me proud again. Ajwa, Secretary Dakong. Moreover, you did one detail very well this time. It was to suppress the media at the first instance and not alarm those people. It's better for old E to handle the matter of evil sword god himself. Little Zhuazi, don't worry. Although there was no news exposure this time, there would definitely be a lot of internal commendations. If you rise to our alliance of 10,000 schools in the future, if old E is willing to put in a good word for you, it'll be quite a big deal. Yes, Secretary. Ajwa thanked him and hung up. He couldn't help taking out a handkerchief from his pocket to wipe his sweat. He was sitting at home, but the pot fell from the sky. It turned out that he didn't have the right to decide whether he would take the blame or not, because it was predestined. Which sky had it fallen from? Not long after Secretary Dakong hung up, another phone rang in the staff apartment where Ajwa was staying. The number showed that it was an unknown number, but when Ajwa saw the caller ID, he already knew that it was most likely General E calling. To be honest, he and General E had actually met once at the military training exercise for the 6 schools, but General E hadn't been very familiar with Ajwa at that time. This was a hero who had founded the nation back then, and a legendary existence who had single-handedly fended off a demon god. In fact, he was already indifferent to a lot of things. It was impossible for an ordinary junior to curry favor with him. So this phone call was in fact an opportunity. But right now, Ajwa's priority was to take the blame for Shifu. Making Shifu happy was his top priority. Although he hadn't learned anything from Shifu yet, with this master-disciple relationship, Ajwa felt that it was only a matter of time. From the very beginning, Ajwa had already thought this through. Ajwa picked up the phone. Compared with Secretary Dakong's usual matchmaking tone, General Yi's voice sounded deeper and more serious. Are you Ajwa? Ajwa nodded. I am. On the other end of the line, General E was silent. Dakong is your Shifu? Ajwa. General E, you misunderstand? We're just a leader and subordinate. General E couldn't help sking. Then why does he treat you like he treats his disciple? If this old man hadn't looked into your background, I would have almost thought you were his illegitimate child. Ajwa's face twitched. Getting down to business, General E cleared his throat. This old man just received a call from him saying that you've captured my long-lost junior brother who has been on the run for many years? Is this true? In fact, the moment he had received the call, General E hadn't really dared believe it, because no one knew his junior brother better than he did. He was vicious and merciless, and had killed his Shifu with his own hands. Back then, his junior brother's strength had already been very terrifying. Now, after disappearing for several hundred years, he had suddenly been captured, which made General E very suspicious. Ajwa, General E, the news of evil sword god's capture is true. The heaven-cleaving sword in his hand has already been taken as evidence, and General E can personally verify it. Very well, this old man can tell at a glance whether the heaven-cleaving sword is real or fake. I'll set off for Songhai City tomorrow, we'll see for ourselves then. On the other end of the line, General E said, but this old man still has a question. Ajwa, please speak, General. General E, I heard that you're the direct leader in this matter. Then can you tell this old man, how was my stupid junior brother defeated? I hope you're not trying to deceive me. I've already put a curse on this phone. If you hide anything for the next 6 months, every time it rains, you'll feel an unbearable itch all over your body. To be honest, Ajwa breathed a sigh of relief at this question. Because General E was asking how evil sword god had been defeated, not who had defeated him. As long as he didn't expose Wang Ling, Ajwa felt that it was perfectly fine. In fact, he hadn't seen the battle with his own eyes, and had instead heard everything from grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. He just wanted to hear the truth. Recalling grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's account of the battle, Ajwa replied, General E, it's like this. First, he was slapped twice in the face. After that, he was stuck with a big magic sword, and then, that's all. Chapter 450. July 11th, the 12th Tuesday of the semester. It had been more than 10 hours since Evil Sword God had been officially detained. When Wang Ling got home from school, he set out a brush, a talisman seal, cinnabar and other tools specially used for making talismans on his desk. He had withdrawn Evil Sword God's power of Sword Dao, but that didn't mean it had disappeared. Wang Ling's special characteristic of the Great Sword Dao spell was all-knowing, while Evil Sword God's special characteristic was 10-meter sword circle. In terms of the quality of the characteristics, the one Wang Ling had mastered was undoubtedly the best. However, Evil Sword God's 10-meter sword circle actually wasn't weak. At least in close combat, it could greatly enhance his strength and make him invincible. It was Evil Sword God's bad luck this time to run into him. Otherwise, Wang Ling felt that even Evil Sword God's senior brother, General E, might not be able to take him down with just the 10-meter sword circle. The talisman he was going to draw this time was an inheritance talisman, which could incorporate the Great Sword Dao spell, which he had taken from Evil Sword God previously. This was a type of legendary talisman, and there were almost no records of it in the world's ancient books. It was originally used to pass on the 3,000 Great Daos. Standing in front of his desk, Wang Ling was very seriously drawing a talisman with a brush. Crouching in the chair Wang Ling was sitting in, Loopy Toad also watched intently. Beside the table, there was also a short sheep. Inheritance talisman. Loopy Toad had never seen this kind of Dao talisman before, and it was extremely difficult to draw it. Even a professional talisman master would have a very low success rate, almost negligible. After all, this was a special talisman used to inherit the 3,000 Great Dao, not a skill scroll in the common sense. It was definitely not that convenient. What's this for? Loopy Toad squatted on a chair and blinked. Wang Ling ignored him and concentrated on drawing the talisman. On the side, Sheep raised an eyebrow and looked at Loopy Toad. Obviously, it was drawn for you. Loopy Toad was startled. It never thought that its little master would actually pass on to it the sword Dao that he had taken from Evil Sword God. But I don't know how to use a sword. Loopy Toad sweated. It wasn't convenient for it to hold a sword with its dog paws, unless it could cultivate into a human form. However, the problem was that it had just entered the 2nd grade. It would still take a long time before it could leap to the 1st grade. From the 2nd stage to the 1st stage, there was a stage where the beast would transform into a human form, which was equivalent to the soul formation stage in the realm of spirit beasts. In the end, the beast would need to successfully pass the tribulation before it could cultivate to the 1st stage. Loopy Toad calculated its current cultivation progress. Even if it used the improved version of the Demon King Heart Sutra, To speed up its cultivation, it would still take at least 50 years of hard cultivation without any assistance. 50 years to go from rank 2 to rank 1, this could already be considered as exceeding speed. If a normal spirit beast wanted to cultivate from grade 2 to grade 1, it would take at least 1,000 years. The improved version of the Demon King Heart Sutra had already increased its speed by a full 20 times. Logically speaking, Loopy Toad was already quite content. It wasn't profound sage tyrannical song. Very quickly, Wang Ling finished drawing the Tao talisman and looked up at Loopy Toad. Of course he was aware of Loopy Toad's concerns. But he actually felt that most people had misconceptions about Sword Tao. True Sword Tao didn't necessarily require one to wield a sword. In his previous battle with Evil Sword God had thought that the highest realm of Sword Tao was becoming one with the sword, but in fact that wasn't the case. Each of the 3,000 great Tao had its own many characteristics, and according to each person's different comprehension, these characteristics were divided into many types. Characteristics were characteristics. Realm was realm. Profound meaning was profound meaning. The highest realm of Sword Tao was Traceless Heart Sword, followed by becoming one with the sword. No sword in the hand, but a sword in the heart. This was the highest realm of Sword Tao. But very few people in the world could grasp this realm. Everyone grasped different characteristics of Sword Tao, but if you were skilled in cultivation, you could ultimately reach the level of becoming one with the sword, or even Traceless Heart Sword. Then you could actually grasp the supreme profound meaning of Sword Tao, the world-annihilating sword. So in fact, whether it was Wang Ling or Jinka, both of them could use the world-annihilating sword independently. When fighting Evil Sword God, Jinka had chosen to become one with Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal first before using the world-annihilating sword. That was also Wang Ling's decision. To put it bluntly, it was all for Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's sake. Wang Ling gave the inheritance talisman to Loopy Toad and told it to stick it on its forehead whenever it had nothing to do. The art of Sword Tao was very complicated, but with the inheritance talisman, there was nothing to be afraid of. It could absorb a little every day, and sooner or later, it would be able to master it all. Do I really want to learn it? Loopy Toad took the inheritance talisman, feeling very puzzled. It was only at second class. At best, it was at the nascent soul stage. At the very least, the 3,000 Great Tao was something that only peak true immortals could touch. Wasn't it a little too early to learn it now? Sheep crouched down and rubbed Loopy Toad's fur. The 3,000 Great Tao are difficult to comprehend. Actually, anyone can master it. Why do you think I can run so fast? Loopy Toad was instantly speechless. After hearing Sheep's words, it seemed to understand a little. The gremlins in the villa who had been enlightened by Little Masterling actually didn't have high realms, but each of them had actually mastered at least one of the 3,000 Great Tao. Wang Ling had enlightened them and directly passed them on to them. Sheep, for example, was only at the soul formation stage, but she had mastered the Great Wind Movement technique. Lord Ma, who had the highest realm and was the only itinerant immortal in the villa who Wang Ling had directly enlightened, had mastered the Great Devouring spell. The 3,000 Great Taos were things that could only be naturally comprehended when one reached a certain level of cultivation. Moreover, they were extremely difficult to comprehend, and many people flocked to them like ducks. However, it was naturally a different story if one had an inheritance. Sheep, since Little Master gave it to you, just accept it. Loopy Toad, but I don't have a sword. Sheep, don't you still have claws? Loopy Toad. That night, an old man with a white hedgehog head appeared at the entrance to Songhai First Prison. As usual, he was dressed in a training suit with a red belt. Moreover, he didn't like to walk properly. His feet were a few inches off the ground, and his whole body seemed to be floating. At the entrance of the prison guard saw that there seemed to be someone in front of the door, so he opened a small window to take a look. In the end, the prison guard's face instantly beaded with sweat. Generally? General E nodded and gave a soft sound. Open the door. Logically speaking, the warden's personal approval was usually required to enter a prison. If General E was coming, there was no way Warden Liang wouldn't know. The prison would definitely have made preparations in advance. Unless General E had dropped by in person without any prior notice, the prison guard couldn't help thinking of the criminal whom Warden Liang had personally detained in the special prison cell in the early hours of this morning. It was likely that General E had come for that criminal. How could someone who could be locked up with the old devil and Qing Yu, the master of Immortal Mansion, be an ordinary person? The prison guard felt that it was inconceivable that General E would actually come in person. Chapter 451. At this time, Warden Liang should have already gotten off work and gone home, but he didn't dare because he had received a call earlier from Audiobook saying that General E would be coming over, but the problem was that General E hadn't given him an exact time. Therefore, he had no choice but to wait here, causing him to be restless for the entire day. But it could also be seen that General E really wanted to deal with this matter in a low-key manner and didn't want it to get out. At the same time, Warden Liang was also very puzzled. Was this young man being detained really evil sword god? He didn't dare believe it. After all, this was a figure who had been rumored to be the #1 evil devil before the old devil. After personally killing his Shifu back then, evil sword god's fame had already spread far and wide in the cultivation circle of the older generation. In the hundreds of years that followed, evil sword gods seemed to have faded out of the limelight. But the truth was that there were several cases of swordsmanship experts being mysteriously killed all over the country every year. These cases all had one thing in common. All the victims had died from the same kind of sword chi. To this day, these cases were all open and on file. Those who were familiar with evil sword god would naturally be able to deduce who on earth was responsible for the deaths of these swordsmanship experts. General E had never stopped looking for his stupid junior brother in the last 100 years. But evil sword god was really too cunning. After playing hide and seek for 100 years, he had suddenly been caught. Anyone would feel their scalp go numb. This was evil sword god. How could he be so easy to deal with? As the main person in charge of this case, Audiobook had already given a clear official answer as to who had captured evil sword god. Evil sword god had been arrested by a great senior whom Secretary Dekung had invited. Based on Warden Liang's many years of experience, this kind of ambiguous answer was definitely an exaggeration. Half true, half false. While he was thinking, the prison guard at the door made an internal call. Warden Liang immediately knew that it was most likely General E, and he picked up the phone. Have General E wait in the inner hall first, then notify the supervision department and have them bring him over. The prison guard nodded. Suddenly, Warden Liang seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly asked, "By the way, help me ask the other 2 people in the special cell how they are now." The old devil and the master of Immortal Mansion Qing Yu had been sent to solitary confinement for beating up evil sword god in the prison cell. If there were no accidents, Warden Liang reckoned that the 2 of them were currently planting vegetables in the prison's backyard. They would only be done after planting 10,000 seeds. Both of them were now wearing spirit shackles, so they could not circulate their spiritual power normally. They were no different from ordinary people. It was actually quite difficult to plant 10,000 seeds. Although Warden Liang couldn't verify whether this young man who had been captured was the real evil sword god. If he really was, there was no way he, the warden, wouldn't just put on a show. It was true that evil sword god had done a lot of evil, but when all was said and done, he could be considered a backdoor entrant. Not long after General E arrived in the main hall of the prison, Warden Liang had already arrived with a team of people, followed by a dozen or so prison officers. It looked very ostentatious. "Greetings, General E." The moment he saw the old man with the hedgehog head, Warden Liang immediately smiled. General E nodded, floated down on a chair, and crossed his arms. "Don't stand on ceremony. Dismiss the people behind you first, and then show this old man the evidence you obtained last night." "Very well." With a wave of his hand, Warden Liang dismissed the people behind him, then took out the evidence bag and directly took out the heaven-cleaving sword. General E took the sword and narrowed his eyes as he examined it carefully. To be honest, the moment Warden Liang had taken the heaven-cleaving sword out of the evidence bag, General E had already known in his heart that this sword was definitely real. Not to mention the fact that this sword now looked exactly the same as the one in his memory back then. The sword chi lingering around it also made him feel extremely nostalgic. It's actually the real heaven-cleaving sword. General Yi muttered in his heart. Warden Liang noticed the subtle change in General Yi's expression. General Yi, is there a problem with this sword? No, this sword is genuine. It is indeed the one in this old man's memory. Back then, my Shizhuan sword Immortal Fan Rui used this sword, General Yi answered truthfully. He raised his head and looked at Warden Liang. Did that young man have a tattoo on his body when he was caught? I've already examined him. He was clean from head to toe, and didn't have any tattoos. Warden Liang shook his head. But what? General Yi frowned. Warden Liang said, according to Director Zhuo's description, the tattoos on this person's body only disappeared after he was defeated. Before that, not only did this young man have tattoos, he also had dark eye shadow. Hearing this, the corners of General Yi's mouth couldn't help twitching. Hearing this, he was already 70% sure that this young man was without a doubt his stupid junior brother. The reason why the heaven-cleaving sword was so strong was because it contained the attribute of darkness and chaos. General Yi remembered that his Shizhuan sword Immortal Fan Rui had expended a lot of effort to subdue it back then. Thinking this, General Yi said faintly, in order to seize this sword back then, my junior brother Evil Sword God didn't hesitate to use a forbidden spell to forcibly change the contract. In the end, he was invaded by the heaven-cleaving sword's power of darkness and chaos, causing him to turn black. Tattoos and eyeshadow are his hallmarks. Warden Liang. Is the person inside really Evil Sword God? It shouldn't be wrong, General Yi sighed. Although this junior brother of mine used to be an arrogant person, he definitely wasn't someone who would willfully kill the innocent. Now that I think about it, he already had a plan to seize the sword from the hostage case back then, and he didn't even know that the power of darkness and chaos had entered his body. Saying this, General Yi floated up from his chair and looked at Warden Liang. Let's go, you lead the way. This old man is going to see him. In the meantime, I'll do a final verification. A few minutes later, the two of them appeared in the special prison cell. The young man who had been unconscious earlier had already woken up. Seeing that someone had come, he had a terrified and uneasy expression on his face as he cowered in a corner and trembled. "Who are you? Why did you capture me?" My Shifu is Sword Immortal Fan Rui." The young man screamed in alarm. Outside the prison, General Yi narrowed his eyes. "How long has he been like this?" Warden Liang replied. "He's been like this since he woke up. Director Zhuo was here before, and said that Evil Sword God's appearance is completely different from when he was in battle. I had someone examine him, and the initial suspicion is that he has a split personality." General Yi nodded. "Then I'll test him." As soon as he said this, General Yi directly threw the heaven-cleaving sword in his hand over. Warden Liang broke out in a sweat. "General Yi, this." General Yi pinched his mustache. "Don't be nervous, he's wearing spirit shackles and can't use spirit energy." After a few minutes or so, the young man cowering in the corner finally plucked up his courage and picked up the heaven-cleaving sword from the ground. Then, Warden Liang felt as if Evil Sword God had become a different person as he pointed the sword at himself and General Yi and laughed loudly. "Yi Jianchuan, I Evil Sword God, am here. If you have the guts, let me go, I want to fight you to the death. Fight you to the death, fight you to the death, fight you to the death, fight you to the death. One male and one female, male and female, male and female." Warden Liang was stupefied. At the same time, General Yi couldn't help smacking his forehead when he heard this. While he had been verified, he also felt utterly ashamed. Chapter 452. General Yi covered his face. This was really too shameful. With a crook of his finger, he withdrew the heaven-cleaving sword. The young man, who had initially been wild and arrogant when he held the sword, turned back into a timid and fearful look as he trembled in a corner. There was no trace of the first-generation Evil Sword God at all. Warden Liang. General E, is this what evil sword god looks like when he's in his normal state? General E cupped his chin and shook his head. No, my feeling is that these two personalities are both very extreme. If he's a completely normal junior brother, he should be somewhere in between them. Although he usually exudes a shameless and arrogant aura, my junior brother would never be so cowardly, nor would he make trouble out of nothing. Therefore, whether he is holding a sword or not, this old man feels very strange. Warden Liang sighed. That's right. What's right? General E was puzzled. Warden Liang. To tell you the truth, it was Immortal Toya who did the personality test for Evil Sword God this time. Director Zhuo specially contacted Immortal Toya and specially rushed here from Chrysanthemum Island. Immortal Toya's final conclusion is completely consistent with General Yi's feeling. General E nodded and asked, then did he say what treatment he had? Warden Liang. Immortal Toya said, mental illness needs mental medicine. Mental illness can't be cured by medicine. At most, medicine can only play a supporting role in calming the nerves. In this world, there is no pharmacist who can completely cure split personality disorder. I feel that Immortal Toya is hiding something about this matter, and perhaps it's inconvenient for him to tell me. General E nodded. Warden Liang had been the head of Songhai First Prison for several hundred years, and was better at reading people's expressions than anyone else. When a person was hiding something, he could actually tell from their expressions. General E was also quite convinced of Immortal Toya's medical skills. Back then, the Toya clan had been world famous for their medical skills, which weren't inferior to the Shao clans at all. Furthermore, as far as General E knew, Immortal Toya was probably the only heir to the Toya clan's 9 cycles exquisite pagoda. This was the Toya clan's ancestral magic treasure and a quasi-world-defying magic artifact. Not only did the 9 cycles exquisite pagoda contain the entire Toya clan's lifelong research on medicine, it was also a very powerful sealing magic artifact. But General E had heard that this magic weapon had been severely damaged in a great battle with the Toya clan a long time ago and was still in the process of being repaired. When General E had first come into contact with Immortal Toya, he had old Tang secretly investigate the matter of the 9 cycles exquisite pagoda being damaged, and he had learned some things from there. Even so, General E knew very little about the real cause of the 9 cycles exquisite pagoda's damage. There was even less news about it in the outside world. Of course, General E had his own speculations. He felt that this matter might have something to do with the fact that the Toya clan, which had been at its peak back then, had suddenly taken a sharp turn for the worse, causing the family to decline later on. General E crossed his arms and floated in the air as he said in a deep voice, if it was Immortal Toya who did the appraisal, then this old man has no doubt about it. As for whether or not there is a way to cure my junior brother's split personality, this old man will definitely find an opportunity to personally ask. Warden Liang. Then, Evil Sword God, may I ask General E, how should this subordinate deal with him? General E smiled. Don't get me wrong, I'm not your superior. This old man is here purely as a prison visitor to see my stupid junior brother. Warden Liang should know better than I do what you should do. In 4 words, do business as usual. This old man never bends the law for personal gain. Warden Liang, you should be clear-headed. Warden Liang nodded solemnly and replied loudly, of course. Rest assured, General, I will definitely handle this impartially. On the other side, while General E was visiting the prison, Wang Ling waited for the results of Wang Ming's space survey and pondered a way to help Taoist Guang restore his body. At the moment, it was possible to use spirit lotus roots to create a body for a golden core cultivator's body. The delivery workers who had suffered at the hands of the old devil were a good example. Wang Ling had paid special attention to this matter. With grenade-throwing senior immortal's help and after negotiating with the insurance company, this group of unlucky delivery workers had their bodies reconstructed. Moreover, through this incident, this group of deliverymen became famous on the internet. In the end, this group of deliverymen formed a male idol group called Lotus Tyrant and embarked on the road of pursuing their dreams in the entertainment industry, but the method to reconstruct a body at the true immortal stage was clearly much more complicated than that at the golden core stage. For example, the old devil had tried to use the almighty skeleton he had found in conjunction with the transformation array to reconstruct his body. However, this method was also very risky, and the chances of success and failure were 50-50. If it failed, the skeleton that had been so hard to find would directly disappear. Of course, there was more than one way to reconstruct a body at the true immortal stage. Wang Ling felt that he still needed to think about it at length. At that moment, Wang Ling looked at the time. It was still within range of Taoist Guang's live stream. When Wang Ling opened the live stream room, the number of viewers had already exceeded 2 million. It had doubled again. Furthermore, Wang Ling realized that while Taoist Guang hadn't signed a contract yet, his real name had already been verified, and fans could openly send him gifts. As soon as he entered the live stream room, Wang Ling heard Taoist Guang's gratitude. "Thank you, Light Chaser Fantasy Egg, for the 5 flying swords. Thank you, Red Sea Action is so good, for the 10 immortal boats. Thank you, Legend Loves Lowly, for the 999 Broken Tyrant immortal swords. Thank you, School is about to start, but what if I haven't finished my homework, for the 66 primordial black crystals." Wang Ling, Taoist Guang had already played Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal's recommendation of PlayerUnknown's Battleground, and was now waiting for the game interface. This was often the time for live streamers to talk and chat. Scanning the bullet messages at random, Taoist Guang selected a netizen's question and read it aloud. "Lord Island, what do you think of Nanhan Country's whistleblowing incident?" Taoist Guang couldn't help letting out a hiss as he felt that this question was a little sharp. After he read the question, someone immediately picked up the pace in the bullet messages, and countless bullet messages floated by. The Koreans were also decent people when they were alive. Let's be more civilized and burn incense first. Do you even need to ask? Of course it's to spit. Looking at the bullet messages, Taoist Guang couldn't help laughing. Calm down, everyone. Our phlegm is precious, don't spit it casually. A lot of people sent question marks in the bullet messages. Taoist Guang laughed. For example, even if I save my phlegm for Grandpa Lu, I won't give it to those Koreans. Chapter 453. Wang Ling actually didn't pay much attention to games, because in his opinion, all games were pretty boring. Some civilian players who used up all their free time to create their own characters might not even be able to beat someone else's 6 yuan top-up gift bag. Money should be spent wisely. Only a meticulous life could be called a life. For example, Father Wang would use all kinds of small reasons to dock his pocket money behind his back, which Wang Ling felt was indeed pretty miserable. Furthermore, Father Wang and Mother Wang had already made an agreement with him long ago that he wasn't allowed to use his cultivation skills to earn extra money. Wang Ling understood this principle. On one hand, it was to keep a low profile, and on the other hand, Father and Mother Wang's only requirement of him at this stage was that he study hard. This was what a 16-year-old teenager should do. So a few times before, Wang Ling had asked for free delivery. Was that really stingy? Did he really care about that bit of money? It was all for the sake of being meticulous so that he could save money to buy practice questions and study hard, and when he succeeded in his studies in the future, he could give back to society. It was like what he had said before. Money should be spent wisely. Money should be spent wisely when playing games. Except for crispy noodle snacks in the game store, money should be spent wisely when buying snacks. Except for crispy noodle snacks, money should be spent wisely when drinking drinks. Except for crispy noodle snacks. But even if Wang Ling didn't play games much, young people were certainly more receptive to new things than the elderly. Taoist Guang had only just learned how to use a computer, and there were actually a lot of things he was still figuring out. Compared with a lot of professional players, Taoist Guang was actually very clear about his own position. He was an entertainment live streamer who was working hard to improve his skills. Through the screen full of bullet messages, Wang Ling could naturally tell that a lot of newcomers to the live stream room had heard online about this old man playing games on the island, so they had come out of curiosity to take a look. Actually, a lot of them didn't care how good this Lord Island was at playing games, and had come purely to watch Taoist Guang talk nonsense while playing games. And most importantly, because of the environment, Taoist Guang's live stream had a lot of variety. Between 8 and 10 in the morning was Taoist Guang's deserted island survival time. In the live stream room, he would demonstrate how to create all kinds of fancy survival magic treasures barehanded in a wild environment. It was Taoist Guang's island delicacies time from noon to 2 in the afternoon. In the live stream room, Taoist Guang would demonstrate how to use the food resources on the deserted island to survive. In an environment of survival in the wild, any snake, insect, rat, or ant was a rich source of protein. After that, it was Taoist Guang's game time from 6 to 9 o'clock in the evening. There were a lot of audience members recommending other games in the bullet messages, and Taoist Guang very carefully recorded the names of the games they recommended in his notebook, intending to try them out later. While Wang Ling was watching the live stream, it was actually almost time for Taoist Guang to go offline. The last round was extremely poor. When he landed, he found a level 1 bulletproof vest, a level 1 backpack, not even a helmet, a tachi, and 5 bandages. Apart from that, it was empty. Taoist Guang had always been a solo jungler, and never went to big cities to hang out. Taoist Guang felt that it would be safer for an entertaining old man like him to stay on the sidelines as an observer, and this would also depend on his luck. Some of the things he picked up in the wilderness were fat, while others were thin. Like this time, Taoist Guang had clearly entered a house that looked relatively big in the wild, but it was actually extremely poor inside. Some people jeered in the bullet messages. It's over, it's over. Lord Island is going to donate again. This loot that turns into a box as soon as it lands isn't bad, but Lord Island's luck isn't good. The most flashy thing was that when Taoist Guang picked up the only weapon in the room, the katana, the bullet messages in the live stream room were all the same, game over. Taoist Guang glanced at the bullet messages and couldn't help laughing. Of course he knew that they were mocking him. There's no time. Looking at the time, Taoist Guang couldn't help muttering in his heart when he realized that there wasn't much time left. Furthermore, he had told the audience in the live stream room earlier that this was the last round. Could it be that he really had to go offline in disgrace? Of course that wasn't going to happen. He had been entertained for almost 3 hours. He had to show off his skills to the audience in the last round, of course. He couldn't use cheats. Live streaming platforms now had built-in anti-cheating systems, and live streamers who used cheats would be directly banned from live streaming rooms. Lord Island had read the rules before, so he naturally understood this. So he couldn't use cheats. But Taoist Guang felt that he could use a little magic. Holding the tachi in his hand, Taoist Guang pretended to hide in a house, but in fact he was thinking carefully about what kind of magic he should use. The key to playing this type of survival game was to have a clear grasp of the enemy's position as well as his own. For some LYBs in particular, location information was very important. But the game on the computer was just a pile of data, so even if he opened the heavenly eye, he still wouldn't be able to see through things. Let alone sense auras. These were all virtual data, so how could he sense auras? Furthermore, Taoist Guang only had one tachi. Unless he could kill someone in the room, he would be a live target outside. After thinking for a while, Taoist Guang pretended to stretch, stuck his hands out of the live stream screen, and secretly made a hand seal to cast the spirit concentration spell on himself. This was just an ordinary little spell, but it could greatly increase one's concentration without a sound. When all was said and done, even if you could clearly grasp another person's position in this game, when you really ran into them, it was still a competition of instant reaction. Thinking this, Taoist Guang couldn't help laughing in his heart. He didn't know if there were other people who were playing this game with the spirit concentration spell on, but his was at the highest level. Furthermore, he was very confident that as long as he activated this spell, no one in this game would be able to beat him. After all, he deeply believed that there was no true immortal in this world who was more bored than him. At that moment, the sound of a door opening came from downstairs. Taoist Guang was highly focused, and he instantly heard it. Holding the tachi, he stood guard on the second floor as he waited for the player who had invaded the room to climb up the stairs. Before that person could react, he saw a figure floating in front of his eyes. One strike. Half HP. The player panicked as he raised his rifle and fired wildly at the figure. However, Taoist Guang's reaction was too fast, and with a small leap, he was directly behind the player. With a second strike, the player was directly gone. The bullet messages were full of exclamations. WC. What is that? What? The tachi's damage is so explosive? The draw. Lord Island is definitely a draw this time. Draw +1. Everyone looked at Taoist Guang in the live stream room and saw that his expression was very calm as he confidently fumbled with the box on the ground. This person was very fat. He had a level 3 bag, 3 first aid kits, 2 bottles of drinks, and a level 2 helmet. But after searching for these things, Taoist Guang left straight away. The bullet messages were full of question marks again. Lord Island isn't picking up a gun? You forgot the automatic rifle. Lord Island. Holding the tachi, Taoist Guang was extremely confident. I'm sorry, Lord Island doesn't need a rifle. Bullet messages? Taoist Guang. The moment I held the tachi, the game was already over. Lord Island. Come on, you've killed people before, but you really aren't very strong. Someone couldn't help ridiculing him. Seeing this bullet message, Taoist Guang didn't say anything, but simply turned on the quiz system. In progress. Live streamer has killed 20 or more people, can't. Furthermore, Taoist Guang directly changed the room title. Chapter 454. The audience in the live stream room didn't expect Lord Island to actually open a guessing game and even directly change the room title, katana in hand. Game over. 1/ to kill Peppa Pig. The bullet screen in the live stream room exploded. F***CK. Lord Island. What did Peppa Pig do to you? Paige, don't know if I should say Killing 20 with a katana? Lord Island. Do you think this is a knife fight? He's holding a gun. How can you win? Kill 20 or more. Can you or can't you? This is a free point question. It was very obvious that the bullet messages had directly exploded because of Lord Island's domineering guessing game and eye-catching room title. Wang Ling scanned the bullet messages and found that, as expected, most of them were skeptical. There were even live streamers from other rooms who had run over to Taoist Guang's live stream room to drop in and publicly diss Taoist Guang for using this room title to attract viewers. But it turned out that this gimmick was really good. The number of viewers in the live broadcast room also increased under the influence of the major anchors visiting and dissing him. It soared from the original 2 million to more than 8 million. Among them were Lord Island's light chasers, fans of other live streamers, and even more onlookers who had joined in on the fun. In that instant, Wang Ling suddenly felt that Taoist Guang actually had the talent to be a live streamer. In just a few days, the number of viewers in the live broadcast room had stabilized at more than 2 million, and it was even approaching 3 million. The most important thing was that a large number of new viewers each day were amused by Taoist Guang's live stream and turned into light chasers. On the first day Taoist Guang started live streaming, 800,000 people had already signed up for the 10HNY Light Chaser live streamer card. And now, the number of light chasers had broken through the 1 million mark. Just as Super Chen and Dopigua had said at the time, this record had already surpassed the previous record for live streaming platforms in recent years. No new live streamer on any live streaming platform could match Taoist Guang's stats in a week. This was partly due to Taoist Guang's own luck, but of course, it was mostly due to his rapid mastery of live streaming rules. What's the first rule of live streaming? This was interaction. Interact more with the audience. Make sure to speak in a civilized manner. Make fun of some hot social issues and make up jokes. Then, on this basis, he would add live streaming elements, so that the old viewers would not feel bored, and at the same time, it would attract more and more new viewers. Taoist Guang had obviously done it. Not only that, Taoist Guang had also learned to use gimmicks to attract an audience, Although the bullet screen in the live broadcast room was now a bit dirty compared to before, there were many voices of doubt, and there were many fans of other live streamers in the live broadcast room sending all kinds of anti-hero bullet screen and war bullet screen. But Wang Ling thought that Taoist Guang wouldn't care in the slightest. After all, he was a true immortal who had cultivated his state of mind for a long time. Taoist Guang wouldn't care in the slightest even if Wang Ling openly cursed him in the live stream room, let alone doubts. After all, when the number of viewers in a live stream increased, it was inevitable that there would be haters. Actually, Wang Ling was quite worried about the personal safety of these trolls, because trolls had a very big characteristic, which was that they were tyrannical online and cowardly offline. As trolls, they couldn't attack live streamers through network cables and Wi-Fi. But as a true immortal expert, Taoist Guang could easily do this. At that moment, there was a lot of rhythmic sound in the bullet screen. Wang Ling cupped his chin in his hand as he curiously looked on among the melon spectators. Report, report. This live streamer is deliberately trying to attract attention. This one could be considered a good one, but Wang Ling saw even more vicious ones. According to the rules of the live broadcast platform, if a live streamer is judged to be a clickbait, he will be banned for 7 to 15 days as punishment. Everyone, disperse. This live streamer is already dead. Remember to burn incense for the deceased live streamer before you leave. Deceased live streamer? When Taoist Guang saw this bullet screen, he was instantly speechless in his heart. He realized that he actually couldn't refute it, because in theory, he was indeed already dead. But Taoist Guang didn't ban these doubtful and even jeering bullet screen comments. This was the effect he was after. Sometimes, being doubted wasn't a bad thing. For Taoist Guang, given that he already had a certain fan base, doubtful voices would only help him expand his fan base. Taoist Guang looked at the number of viewers in the live stream room. It had been less than 5 minutes since he had changed the title. The number of people in the live stream room had already broken 3 million. This was an unprecedented growth rate. If he could convert a quarter or more of the 1 million new viewers into light chasers, Taoist Guang's goal for today's live stream would be achieved. At that moment, the 5-minute time limit for the first blue circle was up and the map began to shrink until there were only 83 people left. Taoist Guang's luck wasn't bad. Although he didn't need to run from the blue circle, he was still some distance away from the center of the safe zone. If he didn't leave now, the next time the blue circle shrank, the characters he controlled would definitely be poisoned. Furthermore, Taoist Guang had already set a goal of killing 20 or more people. If he wanted to accomplish this, he would have to start a frenzied killing spree. Of the remaining 83 people, he would have to use his katana to kill a quarter of them. Just the thought of this was very difficult. Thus, when Taoist Guang decided to officially make his move, Taoist Guang had already banned the bets. The odds were 1:200, more than 2 million people had taken part in the exciting bet, and most of them chose not to. Of course, there were also gamblers who took the risk. 200 times the odds. It was too tempting. I don't care, I hit the light chaser, will support Lord Island. Bet 10,000 immortal pills. My entire fortune. I bet on Lord Island to win. Taoist Guang naturally saw this bullet message. He immediately replied indifferently, Lord Island's marksmanship may indeed need to be improved, but this old man's saber skills won't let you down. Since I've opened the bets, this old man has absolute confidence. For the rest of the live stream, please keep your eyes open and record if you want to. Don't say that I'm using a cheat when I really kill 20 or more people. If a cheat is detected, it's my loss. As soon as Taoist Guang said this, the bullet messages instantly exploded again. He was too confident. At that moment, everyone saw a colorful pinned bullet message in the live stream room. This bullet message was sent by Taoist Guang's #1 fan. Has 3 days and 2 sleeps been updated? It read, the katana is a brand new melee weapon. It's currently the longest of all melee weapons and it does a lot of damage. But the refresh rate on the map is very low, and many live streamers may not be able to find it. Everyone, be quiet and watch Lord Island's operation first. During Lord Island's live stream earlier, who present had ever seen him use a katana. Chapter 455. This high-class colorful bullet message lingered on the live stream room for a full 20 seconds before disappearing. Only the number 1 fan could enjoy this treatment. Indeed, as this number 1 fan had said, the katana was the latest melee weapon in this game, and it dealt extremely high damage. Apart from the head, 2 slashes would empty the HP bar. If you could aim at the head, a helmet would be useless as 1 slash would kill 1 person. Every live streamer had a different way of playing the game. For example, live streamers who were equally good at shooting in this game all used different guns. But even so, a lot of people still felt that this live streamer was a little strange. After all, this was a gun battle game, not Dragon God fighters. What was the saying again? Chopping a wire with a katana, sparks and lightning flashes. This game didn't have a mechanism to break other people's weapons. Why was this live streamer so confident? If someone sniped him from a distance, wouldn't his head be blown off with 1 shot? Although there were a lot of doubts, Taoist Guang had already achieved the effect he had expected. He nodded with satisfaction and concentrated on the screen as he turned on serious mode. The spirit concentration spell continued to work. Although the heavenly eye didn't work on the pile of data in the virtual game, Taoist Guang's eyes could now clearly scan the screen in front of him, as if the image had been broken down into individual pixels. Even if there was a barely visible black dot moving, Taoist Guang could see it. After killing someone in that poor big house on the outskirts and leaving with the medicine, Taoist Guang filled his body with energy and directly ran toward the big house that was still in the safe zone. When the people in the live stream room saw the direction Taoist Guang had chosen, they were all at a loss. It's no use even if the katana's damage is high. There's definitely someone in the city already hiding in a room to snipe you. If you go there, you'll be a live target. Lord Island is a little tough. I thought he would hide in a house to ambush someone. The one above, even if the ambusher wins in the end, he won't be able to kill 20 people. If he wants to kill more, he has to take the initiative to attack. A lot of people sang the song Cold in their hearts when they saw Taoist Guang's choice. In most people's eyes, this was an impossible task. Taoist Guang wasn't in the mood to pay attention to the bullet messages. He knew that before he killed his opponent, the live stream room would definitely be filled with all kinds of mocking and pessimistic predictions. But it didn't matter as long as he held a kitchen knife, katana. If he killed a few more people, the doubts would naturally vanish. Of course, Taoist Guang knew that there had to be people in the big city. Moreover, there would definitely be a lot of lobs crouching at the windows of the houses and shooting from the back, so why did he choose to run in the direction of the big city? Because there were many people in the city. His ultimate goal was to kill at least 20 people. Taoist Guang sprinted forward with a calm expression. Because he was full of energy, his character moved very quickly in the game, and he was only a short distance away from the big city up ahead. But at that moment, he chose to hide behind a big tree. He heard the sound of a motorcycle, and it was very clear that the sound came from the front. Taoist Guang wasn't wearing headphones, and the sound of the game was played externally. Even during the live stream, there was still the sound of the waves nearby. But as a true immortal cultivator, even if the heavenly eye of spirit didn't have any effect on virtual games, in the end, his strong sense of hearing still came in handy. A lot of people didn't understand Taoist Guang's intentions at first, but when they saw the motorcycle coming up ahead, they instantly understood. His hearing is simply terrifying. The live streamer is live streaming on an island and he's not wearing headphones. How did he hear it? New friend, Lord Island's hearing has always been very good. An old viewer who was already a light chaser replied in a bullet message in the live stream room. The motorcycle stopped at a gas station 20 meters in front of the big tree. Taoist Guang confirmed that this person hadn't noticed him, so the moment this person got off the motorcycle and entered the gas station to search for something, he dashed forward like crazy. Audience friends. At that moment, Taoist Guang said as he dashed forward, "Now it's time to witness Lord Island's, this Lord Island's, receiving an express delivery." Receive an express delivery? I'm afraid it's a delivery. Shun Feng God Express, providing the nation's first-rate express delivery service. Out of the corner of his eye, Taoist Guang glanced at the bullet messages on the side, his heart as calm as an ancient well. Holding his breath, he approached the gas station little by little, lowering the sound of his footsteps as he listened for the specific location of the person inside. The person was searching the room. This was a small independent supermarket. It wasn't big, but its location wasn't very good. Next to the mini-mart was a small two-story building. This two-story building had been searched. The windows were intact, and the door was tightly shut. Taoist Guang instantly speculated that after this person was done searching the supermarket, he would immediately search the two-story building. Once this person slipped to the second floor with a melee weapon, the chances of him being able to kill him would be much lower. Thus, Taoist Guang immediately decided that he had to kill this person the moment he left the supermarket. He listened carefully to the person's footsteps in the supermarket as he slowly crept to the side of the supermarket door. The supermarket's windows were anti-theft, and there was no way to jump out of them. The only way to get out was through the door. Furthermore, this person was very cautious and had even closed the door. This was a great opportunity. At that moment, Taoist Guang heard footsteps start to sound inside, and they were gradually approaching the door. This person was about to come out. Almost the instant the door opened, even this player himself hadn't expected someone to actually be at the entrance to the supermarket. Furthermore, he wasn't holding a gun. He was squatting at the door with this shining katana. Digging? What kind of operation was this? It was very obvious that this person hadn't reacted at all as he trembled with the UMP-9 in his hand. However, thanks to Taoist Guang's spirit concentration spell, coupled with his ability to listen to footsteps, his reaction speed was too fast. The moment the door opened, the slender and bright katana landed precisely on the person's head. An obvious system kill prompt instantly appeared in the top right corner of the screen. Player Tsui has killed player Clearlove 8 with a katana headshot. Under everyone's incredulous gazes, Taoist Guang smoothly achieved a double kill. Wang Ling. There was another explosion of bullet messages. 666. Lord Island is awesome. 666666. This time, it won't be a draw again, right? Lord Island's movements and thoughts are very clear. Just like before, Taoist Guang picked up all the medicine on this person. Currently, he already had 4 first aid kits, 2 energy drinks, and 2 painkillers each. Staring at the player's belongings, Taoist Guang pondered for a while, then picked up the frying pan that this person had left behind. Seeing this, someone in the live stream room immediately sent a bullet message. A frying pan. It's a godly weapon. Taoist Guang smiled lightly. Ladies and gentlemen, Lord Island will show you how to catch bullets with a frying pan later. Wang Ling, audience. If he could catch a bullet like that, that would really be abnormal. At that moment, Taoist Guang swept his gaze over the live stream room and noticed that another nouveau riche had gifted him, so he hurriedly thanked him. Thank you, His Majesty the King with blood-stained sanitary pads, for the Spirit Sword Mountain. Although Taoist Guang had killed someone, Wang Ling noticed that there wasn't any joy on his face. Because the second blue circle had already refreshed, during this period of time, the number of people in the upper right corner had decreased sharply again, leaving only 67 people. Chapter 456. There were only 67 people left, but Taoist Guang still had to kill another 18 people before his mission could be considered complete. He had to seize all the time he had to slaughter like crazy in order to catch up. Wang Ling stared fixedly at the image in the live stream room. Other people didn't know Taoist Guang's true realm, but Wang Ling did. Watching a true immortal play games was really a magical experience. Perhaps it was shameful for Taoist Guang to use spells to help him play games. But Wang Ling didn't think it could be considered cheating. After all, Taoist Guang had to rely on his own ability to learn spells. After cultivating for so many years to get to where he was now, even if it was just a support spell like the Spirit Concentration spell, It would take him at least 100 years of painstaking cultivation day and night to reach the maximum level like Taoist Guang had. Moreover, in this day and age, everyone was cultivating. Who knew if other live streamers were using spells to help them play games? Speaking of cheating, there had been a lot of cases recently where live streamers had used cheats and had been turned into frame-by-frame videos. Because of this type of incident, live streaming platforms had also added their own cheat detection mechanism. If live streamers were detected to be using cheats during live streaming, they would be permanently banned from the platform. Of course, the platforms would also give excellent technical live streamers who didn't use cheats the green label. In any case, using software to cheat was already a disdainful thing to do. Upmasters who released solid videos would use frame-by-frame playback to restore the live streamer's shooting scenes in the game, and thus capture some of the abnormally instantaneous movements. Most of the live streamers who used cheats used self-aiming cheats. As soon as the camera was turned on, the super aiming mechanism was already deployed. The muzzle would automatically lock onto body parts such as thighs, necks, and so on, when multiple people appeared in the same scene at the same time, a situation where a live streamer with cheats would suddenly and precisely move the muzzle to another enemy while shooting at one person. It might not be obvious at all during the live stream, but after a slow playback and a frame-by-frame extraction, the problem could always be seen. Wang Ling had paid attention to some solid videos. Take that famous solid video up master, Frogs Can't Beat Pheasants, as an example. It had to be said that at the very beginning, he had indeed been full of a sense of justice. However, later on, these so-called real videos began to deteriorate and became commercial tools between live streaming platforms. Spend some money to hire someone to make a video hammer against a big streamer on a certain platform, and perhaps use the anti-cheat momentum to easily take down the opponent. So, after that, a so-called real-life video made a joke of 1 frame per second. It was one thing to ask for a hammer. However, the one who hammered the person wasn't professional. This was a big problem. After killing the second person, replenishing his medical supplies and obtaining a new frying pan, Taoist Guang simply got on the motorcycle which the player had driven to the gas station earlier and sped off in the direction of the city. Taoist Guang's rank was the so-called fish pond round. Apart from some live streamers who wanted to watch live streams and cheats, the marksmanship of the passers-by was pretty much the same. When riding a motorcycle at high speed, it was actually very difficult to hit it. The noise made by the motorcycles was bound to attract the attention of many people in the city. And this was exactly what Taoist Guang wanted. In a situation where he had to get rid of enough opponents but couldn't find anyone, this was a shortcut. Taoist Guang's idea was that it would be best if someone could shoot him a few times first, then he could analyze the opponent's position based on the sound and trajectory of the bullets, and then retaliate. Just as Taoist Guang was thinking this, there was the crisp sound of a gunshot. Considering that his live stream environment was a little noisy, Taoist Guang had already turned up the game's sound effects to the maximum, so the sound of a sniper rifle was very obvious. Many viewers in the live stream room could hear it. There's a sniper rifle. Lord Island, be careful. Looks like an SKS? Or the kind that doesn't hold its breath. It's over. Lord Island is going to die. Taoist Guang found a house in a corner of the city to use as cover and stopped the motorcycle. While that person had been shooting at him with a sniper rifle, Taoist Guang had already followed the sound and locked onto the position. On the screen, Taoist Guang's character was hiding behind a wall with half his head sticking out slightly, and his field of view was stuck on a tall tower not far away. In the live stream room, a lot of viewers with good eyesight followed Taoist Guang's point of view to see the small black dot on the top of the tower. There were immediately cries of alarm in the bullet messages. What the hell? How did he find it? Lord Island is awesome. He can instantly determine the trajectory of the bullets even on a motorcycle. Ah? Where is it? Why can't I see it? The one above, are you blind? Sparks flew from the muzzle of the person in the tower just now. Taoist Guang didn't have time to pay attention to these bullet messages, but was observing the person in the tower. If he wanted to carry out a massacre in this city, this sniper was a huge hidden danger, and he had to get rid of him as soon as possible. This person's position wasn't far from him. The point was that since Taoist Guang had noticed this person, it was obvious that he had also noticed Taoist Guang. At a relatively close distance, after determining the enemy's general position, it was really too easy to look for him with a powerful scope. The best proof of this was that when Taoist Guang had blocked off his line of sight, he had deliberately revealed half his body, and that person had shot him with a baiyu. But this shot didn't hit him, and instead hit the wall of the building in front of Taoist Guang, leaving behind a very obvious bullet hole. Seeing this, Wang Ling couldn't help complaining. When all was said and done, this was a fish pond game. His marksmanship was too crooked. He was simply a master of body aiming. He was almost catching up to Jiang Bai. Taoist Guang couldn't help sighing in his heart. This little brother's marksmanship wasn't good enough. But that was exactly what he wanted. You dare hit me? Taoist Guang smiled calmly in his heart as he stuck behind the wall. He straightaway swapped the katana in his hand for a frying pan and quickly approached the tower. Everyone in the live stream room was stunned at this scene. Even the person in the tower was stupefied. Taoist Guang had shot him a few times just now. There was no way this person wouldn't know that there was a sniper in his direction. Furthermore, a normal person would usually find a suitable position to circle around him even if they wanted to get close to him and kill him, which would increase the chances of success. Who would directly charge over with a frying pan in hand when they knew there was a sniper in front of them? The player with the ID Galagaki on the tower was stupefied. Very quickly, he came back to his senses. Lying prone on the ground, he scoped in at Taoist Guang and pulled the trigger of his sniper rifle. I'm sorry, brother, I'll accept your express delivery box. Bang. One shot. Hitchin. This time, he had hit the target. However, this player wasn't the least bit happy. This was because he had accurately hit the frying pan with this shot. Because everything had happened in a split second, the player hadn't been able to clearly see what had happened. He had only seen sparks fly from the frying pan in Taoist Guang's hand. It couldn't be such a coincidence, right? Had it hit the frying pan? In the tower, the player took a deep breath, bang. Another shot. This time, the player paid special attention. Very good. He had hit the frying pan again. Or, to be more precise, it was this person who had been charging at him who had waved the frying pan in his hand to block his sniper rifle bullet. Chapter 457. If the first time he had used a frying pan to block a bullet was a coincidence, then this was the second time. Even if it was a coincidence, could it happen twice in a row? But it wasn't impossible to use a frying pan to block bullets. Sometimes, you could even wave a frying pan to send a grenade flying back at you. However, this sort of thing could basically only appear in funny game videos, and could only be done by a few people teaming up to try it out countless times. Otherwise, most of the time, it was a fake. But at this distance, Taoist Guang had used a frying pan to send 2 sniper rifle bullets flying. If it wasn't a cheat, then this reaction was really too heaven-defying. In the bullet messages, in addition to the many brainless light chasers, spamming 666 and shouting awesome, there were even more and more voices of doubt. This is a cheat, isn't it? Waving a frying pan to block bullets, and twice? Lord Island's initial position was as an outdoor all-around entertainment live streamer. He only streams games for 3 hours a day. He wouldn't use a cheat. A light chaser defended Taoist Guang in a bullet message. Does anyone know a super administrator? I strongly request that a super administrator check the room. Now that the anti-cheat system is so advanced, we'll know if there's a cheat once we test it. Yes, yes, yes. I strongly agree. Let the super administrator check it. Agree. If there's no cheat, I'll immediately turn into a light chaser. I'll give the live streamer 10 immortal boats. What? My live streamer is awesome. If you can do it, then go ahead. If you can't, can you stop complaining? Our Lord Island doesn't need to hold his breath to run 10,000 meters to take your head with a katana. Enough. Can those anti-hero haters and trolls stop and let us watch the live stream properly? Do you want to destroy the National Film Academy? Wang Ling. Somehow, Wang Ling felt that the last sentence sounded a little familiar. In the bullet messages, the calls for a check on the cheat grew louder and louder. After all, he had survived until now with a katana, successfully killed 2 people, and then used a frying pan to block 2 sniper rifle bullets in succession. From an outsider's perspective, no matter how they looked at it, it looked like the work of an immortal. Coupled with Lord Island's amazing hearing, ability to instantly lock onto a target's position, and superb reaction speed, when these details were added together, the suspicion of using a cheat was even greater. Most of the time, when a person did something that others couldn't do, the possibility of being suspected of being a cheat was very high. The most important thing was that Taoist Guang had been in the limelight too much in the last 2 days. A tall tree caught the wind was another factor. Every time Taoist Guang started a live stream, a large number of viewers from other live streamers' live stream rooms would flock to his room. For example, Wang Ling felt that there were 3 types of bullet messages in the live stream room that were trying to set the pace, provoke a war, and even play the role of a villain. The first type was the fake reviewers. They might have been hired by other hosts or other platforms. The second type would be the fans of the host deliberately causing trouble. As for the third type, they were the type of people who didn't understand the situation at all and just followed the crowd. But since Taoist Guang was in this line of work, it was impossible to avoid these 3 types of people. The waters in any industry were deep, and the live stream industry was no exception. Furthermore, even if it could be clarified whether someone was a cheat or not, only a small number of people would believe it, and most people would still think that their judgment was correct. Taoist Guang's heart was as clear as a mirror. He was well aware that even if the super administrators came, they wouldn't be able to find anything, so he continued to play the game with a calm expression on his face. Now wasn't the time to pay attention to these unreasonable bullet messages. He needed to concentrate on dealing with the player in the tower in front of him. But after Lord Island switched the frying pan back to the katana, this little brother Galagaki in the tower was blank again. Only then did he realize the person in front of him didn't have a gun. He didn't even have a pistol. Apart from a backpack, a helmet, and a bulletproof vest, the only other equipment that could be seen on him was the katana and the frying pan. Off the screen, little brother Galagaki had a black question mark on his face. That said, what on earth did this person want? Did he really want to cut him with the katana? This didn't make sense at all. Now, little brother Galagaki finally realized that this wasn't a normal person at all. At that moment, little brother Galagaki finally realized the benefit of a shotgun. If he had a shotgun in his hand now, he wouldn't be able to defend himself even if he had a frying pan. But in this case, in the middle of the game, very few people would carry a shotgun on them, unless they were really poor people who picked up trash along the way. A rifle plus a sniper rifle was the standard equipment for the vast majority of players. Seeing that Taoist Guang was already charging at him with the katana, little brother Galagaki panicked and switched his SKS sniper rifle to an M16A4. As long as he was accurate enough, 1 round would be enough to kill him. However, Taoist Guang's attack was more ferocious than he had imagined. This was an active attack from the bottom of the tower. Little brother Galagaki stood on the tower in an absolutely advantageous position. But at that moment, he was already beginning to doubt his life. He, who was in an advantageous position, was instead like a lamb at a disadvantage waiting to be harvested. As Taoist Guang drew closer and closer, little brother Galagaki held his breath and aimed at the entrance to the corridor. Like the vast majority of players, little brother Galagaki had already practiced countless times in his mind how to kill Taoist Guang with a rifle headshot. Holding his breath, he aimed the muzzle of the black rifle at a bend in the corridor. As long as Taoist Guang dared show his head, he would immediately start firing wildly. At the same time, Wang Ling also noticed that the bullet messages in the live stream rooms seemed to have become a lot thinner. Everyone knew that the 2 of them were about to meet. Given Taoist Guang's disadvantageous position, how to use the katana to kill this little brother Galagaki was now the most important thing to watch. At that moment, Wang Ling couldn't help looking at the number of viewers in the live stream. Number 3. 98 million. Because some people had deliberately started a war in the bullet messages just now, a lot of people had automatically shared Daoist Guang's live stream room in their chat groups, WeChat spaces, Tieba and so on. Watching melons was always an indispensable attribute of netizens, which directly led to the explosive increase in the number of people in the live stream room. At that moment, Daoist Guang was standing at the last bend in the corridor, deliberately blocking his line of sight and revealing the katana in his hand. Little brother Galagaki was nervous and couldn't help shifting his feet as he tried to get a better shooting angle. However, it was this slight movement that Daoist Guang caught. After confirming little brother Galagaki's position, Daoist Guang charged forward without hesitation with the katana. F***K. Little brother Galagaki's face turned pale with fright at Daoist Guang's ferocious aura, and he fired at the figure with a d-d-d-d sound. Bullets flew out from the rifle, but Daoist Guang's body seemed to only sway for a moment before the bullets brushed past him. What the hell? Z-shake. Little brother Galagaki couldn't help crying out in alarm. Since this young man had turned on the public voice chat, everyone in the live streaming channel heard his shout, "Audience, Wang Ling. What F*** King Z-shake?" Chapter 458. The Z-shake was an absolutely detailed micro-operation, and the way to use it was recorded in Team Tactician God Ye's Guide to Glory. A lot of people knew about it, but very few people had mastered it. Move left and right to avoid damage with a tiny movement of the mouse in the blink of an eye. But because this operation was really too fast, as if it had been completed in an instant, it didn't look like a movement to outsiders, but a shake. Little brother Galagaki really panicked, and in the blink of an eye, even the bullet messages fell silent. A few seconds later, a large wave of bullet messages surged in, and the voices of doubt began to lessen as a lot of people sent gifts. As Daoist Guang's fans, the light chasers were extremely proud. 666. Lord Island is awesome. Looks like the katana really is something. Lord Island is awesome. Many professional FPS players might not be able to master this kind of body technique. Those of you who are questioning Lord Island's use of cheats, let me ask you, are there still cheats for body techniques nowadays? The light chaser's powerful and resonant greetings left the other fans of live streamers who had come to cause trouble at a loss. Because this was indeed the case. Most operations nowadays were simple and crude, and it wasn't necessarily possible to design a cheat for this kind of micro-operation. Needless to say, anyone who could master this kind of micro-operation was definitely a talent. Relying on the smallest of instantaneous jumps to the left and right to avoid damage, the precision of this operation left people speechless. At that moment, as Daoist Guang's #1 fan, has 3 days and 2 sleeps been updated, used his special privilege to send a high-level pinned bullet message. It read, "I've already sent a private message to the super administrator, and he'll come over to test it right away. I don't know how many water armies and anti-fans there are in the bullet messages, but I hope you can fulfill your promise. If Lord Island is found to be innocent, please send me your gifts. Otherwise, I'll directly find a super administrator in the future and ban every single one of these bullet messages I see." These words were spoken in a domineering and intimidating manner. Brother Sleep is awesome. Damn. Brother Sleep actually has a super administrator's contact information? Who on earth is this person? For a moment, a lot of people were discussing this in the bullet messages. The livestream platform never lacked rich people, and this brother Jew was obviously one of them. To be able to stand out among millions of people and become the #1 fan, not only was he generous, but more importantly, he was able to contact the super administrator of the website. This was enough to prove that this person's identity was not ordinary. It was very likely that he was a boss-level figure, and he might have cooperated with the live broadcast platform. Someone took a screenshot of Brother Jew in the live stream and sent it to the chat group of the Guild of Honest Men. Who is this? Has 3 days and 2 sleeps been updated? 3 days and 2 sleeps? Could it be that web novelist 3 Days and 2 Sleeps? Holy shit! 3 days and 2 sleeps? Someone was startled. This was an existence that could keep pace with Wang's situ. Don't be so flustered. I don't think so. As far as I know, this author doesn't do proper work every day, and he's used to live streaming games on Bilibili. There was a huge group of people urging for updates. They would do anything but not update. There are so many fans watching, how would they have the time to watch a live broadcast? Agreed. It's one thing to watch a live broadcast, but the problem is that he gave so many gifts to a new live streamer. If his wife found out, I'm afraid she'd break his legs. What? 3 Days and 2 Sleeps got married? When did that happen? Why didn't I know about it? You're a village networker? He already has a child. Do you know why there are so many stay-at-home dad novels recently? It said that it's all written by an expert hired by this 3 Days and 2 Sleeps. Saying that, this person sent a funny emoji. As they discussed this in the group, they couldn't help wanting to enter this live stream room to take a look. Moreover, this matter continued to ferment, and at the same time, it was widely spread on the internet. The number of viewers in Taoist Guang's live stream room had suddenly increased from almost 4 million to more than 4,800,000 at the same time. People really couldn't understand this surge in numbers. Spectators were adding fuel to the fire, as well as a lot of live streamers' fans were making a ruckus, otherwise it wouldn't have reached this level. While the live stream room was bustling with activity, Taoist Guang had already slashed this Galigaki little brother with his saber, and half of his HP was gone in a flash. The little brother immediately had his character crouched down. Big bro, please don't kill me. In that moment, Taoist Guang thought for a bit, and in the end didn't slash down a second time, because he realized that this player had already thrown away all the guns in his hands, and even the bullets on the ground. This dramatic scene undoubtedly made the game a lot more fun, and the live stream room became more and more lively. Lord Island, don't just stand there. Hurry up and kill him. There's less than 50 people left now. Reminder, live streamer, you still have 18 people to kill. Some people couldn't help reminding him in the bullet messages, but Taoist Guang didn't look at them at all. He put the katana back in place of the frying pan and couldn't help smiling. Young man, you have a bright future ahead of you. Crouching on the ground, Galigaki little brother breathed a sigh of relief when the bright katana disappeared. Big bro, you're so awesome. Should we work together? If we're still alive in the last circle, how about we fight it out? Fight it out? No, there's no point at all. Taoist Guang shook his head and directly refused. You definitely can't beat me, Galigaki little brother, Taoist Guang. In addition to the Z shake, I can actually also do the S shake and the M shake. I've already mastered half of the 26 English letters. Are you going to fight me with your head? Galigaki little brother. Saying this, Taoist Guang also crouched down. They were standing on a high vantage point, and their heads were completely hidden when they crouched down, so no one could hit them at all. Galigaki little brother didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Then big bro, tell me what should I do? If I can follow big bro, I'll be fine with second place. Second place is so boring, isn't it? Young man, you should be more ambitious. Taoist Guang laughed. I'll let you win the chicken dinner, and I just need to kill 20 people, huh? Then, brother expert, what do you want me to do? Very simple, you'll be bait. Bait? Understanding, this little brother immediately nodded in agreement. Deal. Bait it is. Brother expert, pick up the guns and bullets on the ground, I'm sure your marksmanship will be very accurate. Taoist Guang sked. When did I say that I was going to use a gun to fight? The little brother smiled tearfully. I say, brother expert, if you don't use a gun, you want to kill 20 people? Don't tell me you really want to use this katana to kill 20 people? Taoist Guang said matter-of-factly, that's right. The little brother, looking at the map, Taoist Guang saw that the blue circle was starting to shrink again. And the city they were crouching in just happened to be the safe zone. Very quickly, a large wave of people rushed to the city from other places. For Taoist Guang, this was a great opportunity to slaughter them all. Look at the map, we're right in the center of the safe zone, and a bunch of people will be rushing here very soon. Taoist Guang said carefully, there are less than 50 people left, and your task is to lure them out. Do a good job, brother, I'm a live streamer. More than 4 million brothers in the live stream room are watching you. The little brother, Taoist Guang, don't worry, I've already said that the whole game is my pig farm. I'll definitely make sure you win the chicken dinner. I'll stay here and don't move, you go down the tower and lure as many as you can. It's best if you can trigger the same effect as 10,000 pigs arching the tower. Chapter 459. Wang Ling stared at this number 1 fan, Brother Sleep's bullet message for a long time. For some reason, he felt that it was familiar, especially the tone and style of these words, which gave Wang Ling a sense of déjà vu. As Wang Ling lowered his head in deep thought, he saw the bullet messages in Taoist Guang's live stream reach a peak once again as Taoist Guang and a passerby little brother teamed up. Wang Ling had no choice but to reduce the number of bullet messages. There were already so many bullet messages in Taoist Guang's live stream that if he didn't control them, he wouldn't even be able to see the game screen. In the game, Taoist Guang and this little brother Galagaki were still crouched on the top of the tower, and neither of them moved. A moment later, the livestream viewers heard the young man exclaim, F***CK. Brother expert, you're actually a streamer. It was just that he hadn't heard the name Lord Island before. It was very obvious that this was a new live streamer. Little brother Galagaki was a person who liked to watch live broadcasts. If it was a veteran streamer, there was no way he wouldn't know. Of course, he didn't mean to discriminate against newcomers. Because he felt that a newbie streamer that he had never heard of could actually perform such a level of maneuvering, it was really terrifying. As expected, the rookies these days were all monsters. Then, the young man looked at the number of viewers in the live stream and was shocked. He felt like he was suffocating nearly 5 million viewers. A newbie anchor? How did he do it? In the live stream room, a row of bullet screens floated past. Congratulations on being on TV. Heh, little brother came to check the room? Are you surprised? Are you surprised? Isn't it exciting? Little brother, you can do it. Lord Island will take you to win chicken dinner. Steady, you can win. At this moment, the young man chose to temporarily turn off the bullet screen that was blocking the live broadcast. He took a look at the face of the expert bro, who was blocked by the dense bullet screen. He had thought that the person who could perform such precise maneuvers would be a young man. But he never expected that the person sitting in front of the screen was an old grandpa with white hair and beard. As a grandfatherly streamer, his voice was too young, too magnetic. It sounded too good. Voice was never a hard requirement for a host, but it was a bonus, especially for those who were fans of voices. A good voice could indeed attract fans. Thus, Taoist Guang's voice had been tampered with. This wasn't a voice changer, but a large-scale beautifying sound wave spell that could automatically generate Taoist Guang's voice in combination with the audience's imagination. In other words, there were nearly 5 million viewers in the live stream room, and each of them heard Taoist Guang's voice differently. Wang Ling had noticed this from the very beginning. After all, it was too easy for a true immortal to cast a spell of this level. But this kind of beautifying sound wave technique was completely ineffective against Wang Ling, and what he was hearing now was still Taoist Guang's original voice. It was deep, yet it didn't lose the vicissitudes of life. The young man calmed himself down. It was still game time, so he did not stay in the live broadcast room for too long. He quickly turned off his phone and focused his attention on the game in front of him. The huge popularity of the live broadcast just now made this little brother Galagaki's heart tremble to this day. A live broadcast with 5 million viewers. Everyone was looking at him. The little brother's heart was beating so fast that he couldn't even speak fluently. Brother, expert, how long have you been live streaming? Taoist Guang. Less than a week. The little brother sucked in a breath. Then you're a sock puppet? Taoist Guang. Sock puppet? What does that mean? As an old man who was several thousand years old and had been dead for some time, as well as someone who had only recently come into contact with the internet, Taoist Guang wasn't very clear about a lot of online terms. The little brother sweated and explained to Taoist Guang. Sock puppet means a smurf. Taoist Guang. Oh, I'm not. I'm really just a newbie. The little brother, Taoist Guang. By the way, doesn't smurf also mean pea? The little brother laughed. Wang Ling couldn't help taking a look at the bullet messages. Sure enough, a bunch of troublemakers were already frantically spamming. Huaxiao Nation's culture is extensive and profound. Little brother Galagaki now suddenly understood a little why a new live streamer like Taoist Guang was so popular. Not only was he witty and humorous, his skills were also good. To be able to find something different in this kind of gun battle game from other live streamers, to kill 20 people with just a katana, this was a great gimmick. The most important thing was that he was actually a grandfather with a very nice voice. If he hadn't seen the live stream room, little brother Galagaki would have really thought that this was a youngster. It was over. The little brother realized that he had already completely turned into a fan. Nowadays, live streamers who were both talented and good at operating and had a nice voice were really few and far between. The little brother decided that after he was done with this round, he would immediately follow the live stream room. Thus, in order to leave an impression on Lord Island, he had to perform well. Thinking this, little brother Galagaki took a deep breath. Lord Island, what do we do now? I'm at your command. The little brother had already picked up the equipment that had been thrown on the ground earlier and was fully armed. Taoist Guang personally felt that the tower they were in was in a very good position. It extended in all directions and was the highest point in the city with the widest view. Furthermore, from the information on the map, Taoist Guang felt that the tower they were in was very likely the final heavenly circle. However, no one would usually choose to set up a station here, because if someone threw a grenade up here, they would be killed straight away. But Taoist Guang wasn't afraid. However many grenades were thrown down there, he would catch them with a frying pan. Taoist Guang listened carefully, then raised the katana in his hand and pointed in one direction. He had heard footsteps. There's someone in that direction. Be careful around the corner at the end of the alley and look for cover. Just lure people out, don't get hung up on fighting. I'll do my best to use one-wave rush. Audience, Wang Ling. What F*** King one-wave rush? Alright. The little brother nodded his head and was about to control his character to descend the tower. Taoist Guang was alarmed and called out to him. Wait, don't you have any potions? The little brother paused. Yes, I have 4 packs and drinks. Taoist Guang couldn't help laughing. Why don't you bring your HP back to full before you leave? I almost forgot. Little brother Galagaki patted his head. He had been too excited just now. He had forgotten to bring his HP back to full. In the end, he had been at half HP until now. For some reason, Wang Ling inexplicably felt that Taoist Guang and this little brother were in a kind of cute contrast. Before he left, the little brother turned his head and asked Taoist Guang, Lord Island, is my task as long as I lure people out? Taoist Guang nodded. That's right, then do your best to protect yourself before you come back to the tower to find me. Alright, it's just luring people out. Leave it to me, Lord Island, this is what I used to do. The little brother rushed out in high spirits. Wang Ling and Taoist Guang were both blank. This was what he used to do. As soon as he left, the little brother straightaway fired a gun into the air as he shouted, Come, take a look and learn about swimming and fitness, Taoist Guang, Wang Ling. Chapter 460. Following little brother Galagaki's professional gym promotion cry, the bullet messages in the live stream room instantly burst out in laughter and were exceptionally happy. Is this little brother a fitness instructor? Not necessarily, it's possible that he has part-time experience distributing leaflets before. For a moment, a lot of people couldn't help guessing this little brother's identity. Based on what he had just seen, this little brother's marksmanship could be said to be pretty good. So much so that Wang Ling felt that he could be compared to Jiang Bai, the son of the head of kitchen knife sect at school, in terms of how many sides he aimed at when he shot an arrow. However, This passerby little brother was very entertaining and had a funny nature to it. He might be a noob, but being able to entertain the audience in games was number one. It was just like how game live streamers were divided into entertainment live streamers and professional live streamers. Thus, it was common to see a lot of two-player live stream rooms on many live streaming platforms nowadays. Usually, the division of labor between two live streamers was very clear. One was in charge of technical skills, and the other was in charge of being funny. Based on this foundation, a lot of people instantly felt that Lord Island and this little brother Galageki's attributes were quite compatible. Lord Island, do you want to try and win chicken dinner with this little brother Galageki in the future? This little brother is stupid and adorable. I think it's possible. I think it's totally okay. Let's win first. There were a lot of people making a ruckus in the bullet messages, but Taoist Guang ignored them. Clutching his katana, he crouched on the tower and listened to little brother Galageki's footsteps in front of him. The footsteps of every character in the game were actually pretty much the same, and it was very hard to distinguish them when they overlapped. But Taoist Guang had seen the little brother walk in that direction, and a radar had automatically formed in his mind to mark the little brother's position. Based on the sound of his footsteps, the little brother was already quite close to that group of people. Furthermore, Taoist Guang judged that this group of people who had hurried over from another town was a temporary four-person team. Although this was a one-player mode, in order to increase their chances of winning chicken dinner in the fish pond game, a lot of people would take the initiative to form a team when they met in the first circle to work together and share equipment and resources equally. When the number of people dropped sharply to a certain limit, such as 20 people, they would then disperse and fight each other. This was actually a test of trust between people. Sometimes, some players would purposely propose to form an alliance with others in order to increase their KDA. In the end, it was not uncommon for them to stab others in the back. Taoist Guang had actually already seen the bullet messages asking him and this little brother to play as a pair in the future. To be honest, Taoist Guang thought this suggestion wasn't bad, but it still depended on this little brother's overall level. It didn't matter if he was bad, as long as he could improve. Moreover, this kind of job like sending people out to lure people only had a certain success rate in the fish pond game. After all, there were many jokers in the fish pond game. If it was placed in a high-ranking game, it would be a showdown between experts. Not to mention baiting them openly, if they dared to show their heads, they would be shot in the head. There was no need to waste time talking nonsense. The little brother had already been gone for 20 to 30 seconds, and Taoist Guang and his water friends in the live stream room were waiting for news. To be honest, while it was easy to think about it, it really wasn't guaranteed to succeed. If the little brother had been killed, Taoist Guang would have wasted so much time here and definitely wouldn't have been able to complete his target of 20 kills. But there were times when Taoist Guang preferred to trust his intuition. He hadn't chosen to kill this little brother before, and he felt that this was some kind of destiny that had been predestined by the unseen. How did the saying go? Meeting each other was fate. Fate was too wonderful for words. The number of people was dwindling to just over 40, while Taoist Guang still had 18 people to deal with. A lot of people were discussing this in the bullet messages, taking pleasure in Taoist Guang's misfortune. These people were the ones who had bet that Taoist Guang wouldn't be able to kill 20 people. In their eyes, there was basically no hope for Taoist Guang now. Although the odds were indeed a little low, in any case, it was still a profitable business. Immortal pills could be converted into money. Every 2 months, the live stream platform would open a day to convert immortal pills into HNY for viewers who needed a discount. 1 million immortal pills was equivalent to 800 HNY. Which actually wasn't a lot, but there was still entertainment in it, and having fun was the most important thing. Give up, live streamer, you've already lost. I think that little brother might not come back. If the little brother as bait is killed, the live streamer will immediately be done for. A lot of people stared at the screen in the upper right corner of the game. In this circle, all the players were a little cautious, and very few people would die. If the little brother died, his ID would appear on the public screen in the upper right corner. Little brother probably won't die, right? Who knows? But I don't think it's attractive at all to get a membership for swimming and fitness. For a moment, a lot of light chasers were a little anxious. They couldn't understand why Lord Island could be so confident and still be so patient in waiting here. Given the number of people they had now, if they didn't go out and fight, forget 20, it would be pretty good if they could even kill 10 people. All the players were killing each other. In the later stages of the game, the number of players decreased in a step-by-step fashion. What an infuriating live streamer. After another 30 seconds or so, Taoist Guang and the water friends in the live stream room finally heard the little brother's familiar voice. Lord Island, I'm coming. As the little brother jumped and ran, a lot of bullets were fired at him from behind. He had already been shot. The water friends in the live stream room looked over from Taoist Guang's point of view, and sure enough, they saw 4 people chasing little brother Galagaki. There were cries of alarm in the bullet messages, F***K. They really lured him over. Not bad, little brother. Very quickly, the little brother had already run back to the tower in the distance. He crouched down and climbed the tower, and when he reached the middle of the tower, he lay prone on the ground to heal himself. How is it? Taoist Guang's character moved to the little brother's side to assist him. I'm low on HP. My bulletproof vest is almost gone. But luckily, I'm not dead. The little brother sweated. After all, he had run through a hail of bullets from 4 people. What about the helmet? Did it break? Asked Taoist Guang. The little brother checked his equipment. No, it's in perfect condition. The water friends in the live stream room already couldn't help ridiculing him. When all was said and done, this was a fish pond round. The bottom line was really low. No wonder these 4 people couldn't kill one of them. As it turned out, all 4 of them were Sunset Glow. There's actually 4 people. Taoist Guang had already determined the number of people from the other side's footsteps, and feigned a nervous smile in front of the screen. But very quickly, Taoist Guang's expression turned serious as he said coldly, but they all have to die. The first player had already rushed over. You're the one who promotes swimming and fitness. Come out. I know you're in the tower. I hate these damn salesmen the most. The player was about to charge up with his rifle, but just as he approached the bottom of the tower and was about to climb the steps, he saw a figure fall from the sky with a blade in his hand. Taoist Guang was too fast. This time, Lord Island didn't waste any time and directly beheaded him. The player didn't even have time to shout before he directly turned into a box. At the same time, the kill notification appeared in the top right corner of the public screen. Player T killed player Haro Rundakwai with a katana headshot, triple kill. Chapter 461. I recommend teacher Ming Yu's I Might Be a False Immortal synopsis. The male protagonist, Enlin, fell off the rooftop after being chased by his CRS and was rescued by an elderly immortal. The elderly immortal deceived the male protagonist into giving him a fraudulent system, and Enlin enrolled in the United University of Cultivation, where he began his bizarre and fantastical cultivation career. This was a light-hearted and humorous novel, and it mainly described the male protagonist's life at the university, where he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The characters in the novel had distinct personalities, and the dialogue was humorous and humorous. There were all kinds of fascinating twists and turns, and the characters' complaints were also quite interesting. Additional notes. 1. This is definitely not a shady transaction. It is merely an in-depth discussion between teacher Mingyu and I on the topic of gender studies. 2. I don't wish for fellow cultivators to compare immortal kings and false immortals. Each has its own merits, and this chapter says that they should all be eliminated. 3. Sorry. I'm late again today. Chapter 462. In the end, Wang Ling didn't finish watching Taoist Guang's live stream. After all, exams were coming up, and it was important for him to prepare for them. The most important thing was that for Wang Ling, exams weren't just a simple exam, but a control game that required precise final exam results. He couldn't go too low, and he couldn't go too high either. If he went too low, the teacher wouldn't be happy, and if he went too high, Father Wang would have a heart-to-heart talk with him. He had already prepared for the Tao Talisman's course, and could more or less keep his marks below the class average. Teacher Pan had never been the kind of person who gave test papers in a conventional way, and was very fond of asking questions that went beyond the syllabus. These questions were actually very simple in Wang Ling's eyes, but he couldn't answer them. Because in most cases, those who could answer questions like these were the cream of the crop in the elite class. For example, Lotus Sun and Little Peanut were outstanding elite students who were often singled out by Teacher Pan for praise. But this was too ostentatious, and Wang Ling wasn't used to it, so for the time being, Wang Ling pretended that he couldn't answer them. Actually, this kind of feeling was pretty hard to bear. It was like the neighbor's kid who had just learned the multiplication table and came to test you, and you had to smile and pretend you didn't know anything. What was most important in exams? Attitude was the most important. Of course, it wasn't just exams, it was the same for other jobs. Wang Ling remembered that a while back, a member of a top domestic MOBA game team had skipped training to pick up a girl the night before a competition. In the end, he had his head shaved off in history. 0 towers, 0 dragons, 0 kills. There had also been a very handsome fan who had specially sent a song to mock him. So no matter what, attitude was everything. Thus, after reading the revision materials for about 5 minutes, Wang Ling closed the math textbook and exercise books. He had already finished reviewing them. Looking at the clock on the wall in his room, Wang Ling couldn't help sighing in his heart. Time really passed slowly. On the other side, Taoist Guang had already logged off. Although the screen in the live stream room was black, there were actually still over 1 million people who hadn't left and were spamming 666 like crazy. It looked like everything was going as Taoist Guang had imagined. Relying on a katana, he had killed 20 people in a row, and that Galigay QI little brother had finally won the chicken dinner. A lot of people found this operation quite inconceivable. It was even more amazing than the comeback of that live streamer Glutinous Rice who had won the chicken dinner previously. Wang Ling, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, and Taoist Guang were the only 3 people in the group chat. After the live broadcast, Taoist Guang immediately sent several comical emojis. Hiya hiya hiya, this time, I've gained at least 1 million more fans. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, I saw Brother Guang's live stream. You killed 20 people with your katana, and in the end, that passerby little brother won chicken according to our agreement. Brother Guang is quite powerful. Taoist Guang. But this unconventional way of eating chicken is too eye-catching, and we can't use it all the time. If it was a high-level game, no matter how accurate the Tachi was, it would still be no match for a headshot. Today's success was due to luck. These juniors are still too young. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. When the super administrator came later, he didn't detect that Brother Guang was using a cheat, but I think Brother Guang probably used some minor magic. Taoist Guang chuckled. Brother Lei is smart. This shouldn't be considered cheating, right? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. You flatter me. You're an immortal to begin with, Taoist Guang chuckled. My big plan now is to pull in more fans, and finally trick them into becoming my believers so that they can help me make figurines. That way, I might be able to successfully transcend the samsara spirit tribulation. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was startled. There's this kind of operation? Taoist Guang. This is the first time I've heard of this figurine, but it's worth a try. If I want to make figurines to replace statues with my unconventional way of transcending the tribulation, all the figurines have to be made of the same material, and I have to be very detailed. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal shook his head and said in the chat group, I think it'll be a little difficult. Exquisite figurines were now very expensive on the market, and in this day and age, they weren't just figurines. They weren't just for viewing and collection purposes. There were a lot of sky-high priced figurines on the market now, which had been personally blessed by an almighty. If they encountered an accident, such as something suddenly falling from the sky, the figurines would automatically emit a protective golden light. Currently, the highest grade of figurines cost 9.8 billion immortal gold bars. and it was said that this figurine could be used as a substitute for a person's life. That was to say, even if there was an extremely ominous divination, it could be used to avert danger. But this 9.8 billion immortal gold bars. It was likely that no one could afford this sky-high price. It was comparable to the total wealth of one of the world's top 100 corporations. Thinking this, grenade-throwing senior immortal couldn't help looking at the soul suppression ring on his hand. It also had the effect of averting danger, and its effect was clearly even more heaven-defying than that sky-high price blessed figurine. Taoist Guang was obviously thinking the same thing as grenade-throwing senior immortal as he typed. I looked up information on figurines earlier, and I know that there's a figurine worth 9.8 billion immortal gold bars that can be used as a substitute for a person's life. Grenade-throwing senior immortal nodded. That's right, Brother Guang. It said that this figurine was painstakingly created by tens of thousands of skilled craftsmen, and it's authentic down to every pore. Furthermore, to ensure its authenticity, a blackhead was specially stuffed into its nose when it was designed. Taoist Guang nodded. I can roughly guess. To make a figurine to this extent, it must have been fused with a great spell similar to the life and death exchange, but there aren't many people who can cast this kind of spell. Grenade-throwing senior immortal. Could it be immortal Jinyun? The corners of Taoist Guang's mouth twitched. Given that senior's naughty nature, it's really possible that he made this figurine. Grenade-throwing senior immortal, Taoist Guang. But I don't need such a high-level figurine. It's enough if it can make me more detailed. Brother Lei, do you know anyone? Grenade-throwing senior immortal, I really don't. I'll have to ask a friend. If I really want to make a figurine, I can't just look for random people. Nowadays, those figurines made by those small workshops are all evil gods. Haha. Taoist Guang sent a teary smile emoji. Come to think of it, Brother Lei. Come to think of it, Brother Lei, why hasn't Senior Ling said anything in our 3-person chat group? I know Senior Ling has been looking for a way for me to restore my body. But since I've already decided to try using the figurine to get through the samsara spirit tribulation, I'm not in a hurry. Grenade-throwing senior immortal, just tell me directly. Brother Ling definitely saw it. He's spying on us. Chapter 463. It was July 12th on Wednesday in the 12th week of the semester. That morning, Loopy Toad stuck the inheritance talisman to its forehead and squatted at the door to collect the spirit chi of heaven and earth to absorb the power of Sword Tao in the inheritance talisman. At this time of the morning, when the sun rose, the spirit chi was at its purest, which was very good for cultivation. Loopy Toad had only grasped roughly 5% of the inheritance talisman, but it already felt that it was stronger than before. After all, this was the power of Sword Tao that contained the 3,000 great spells. Every bit more was infinite power. After sticking to the inheritance talisman for a while, Loopy Toad felt that its head was already a little full, and it felt swollen and painful. This was a normal phenomenon when the truth of the great spells was filled in. Loopy Toad stretched out its dog paw and took off the inheritance talisman. If this happened, it wouldn't be suitable to continue receiving the inheritance, and would need to rest for a while to completely absorb the truth of the great spells before continuing. Loopy Toad was well aware that this thing couldn't be rushed, and needed to be slowly polished and absorbed bit by bit. Some people would never be able to comprehend the power of the great spells in their entire lives. Loopy Toad felt that it had nothing to complain about now that it could master one type of great spells with just one inheritance talisman. There was a limit to everything. Although it couldn't digest it all at once, it was only a matter of time. Loopy Toad gazed at the sky as it recalled its prophetic dream. It didn't know what on earth would happen to the sky-swallowing Toad clan in the future, but Elder Wind's cry for help was real. Generally speaking, prophetic dreams predicted what would happen within a month, and wouldn't be too far away. Loopy Toad was suddenly a little worried about the future of the sky-swallowing Toad clan. Although it had changed, its identity as the clan's 10th leader would never change. In the eyes of many clansmen, it was already dead. But it wasn't truly dead. Given that the sky-swallowing toad clan was still leaderless, Loopy Toad felt that it should take on this responsibility. Loopy Toad stretched out its tender green dog paw, and sharp white nails popped out with a faint golden spirit light. This was the special effect of the aura of Sword Dao lingering around the paw. But this was clearly far from enough. Evil Sword God's Sword Dao characteristic was the 10-meter sword circle, and Loopy Toad had only inherited 5% of it. To truly display the effect of the 10-meter sword circle, it would have to comprehend Sword Dao to at least 50%. Loopy Toad made a simple prediction, and felt that given its current progress in comprehension, it would take at least half a month before it could inherit 50% of the power of Sword Dao in the inheritance talisman. It didn't know if it could make it in time to deal with the calamity of the Toad clan's prophecy. Loopy Toad had its own considerations on this matter. It had thought that the worst-case scenario would be nothing more than asking Little Masterling for help. But the problem was that Little Masterling was about to take his midterm exams. Who would have the time to care about such a trivial matter? So after thinking it over, Loopy Toad in the end didn't ask Little Masterling. It felt that it would naturally be best if it could handle this matter properly on its own. It was the midterm exam preparation period, and the school teachers were frantically scribbling papers as if they were on steroids. The physical education teacher, who was supposed to be the best, had become a weak and sickly target. So that morning, Teacher Pan was already in class, and she was sitting solemnly in front of the lectern as she graded the test papers from yesterday's Dao Talismans class. This was a critical period, and the first to arrive at school were usually Super Chen and Dopigua. These two had one thing in common, and that was that they were very partial to subjects. One was good at liberal arts and the other at science. Furthermore, they were both at the top of the class. So it had already become a daily routine for them to come to school early to copy each other's homework and get what they needed. Wang Ling didn't know where Teacher Pan had heard this, but she had been guarding the classroom since early in the morning in order to prevent some opportunistic people from coming to school early to copy homework. So when Super Chen and Dopigua arrived in class that morning, they were dumbfounded. F***K. Why was old Pan here so early today? When the two of them appeared at the classroom door, their hearts were filled with shock. Teacher Pan was marking the exam papers with the expression of an old and experienced person. It could only be said that as a pioneer teacher at number 60 high school, Teacher Pan was in the end Teacher Pan. It could be said that she was very familiar with the little schemes in the students' hearts. It was obvious that there was something wrong with the way the new teachers were acting and their movements were unnatural. Teacher Pan immediately deduced that it wasn't that these two hadn't done their homework, but that they had planned to come to the classroom to copy each other's homework in the morning. In the end, they had discovered that she was in the classroom, which was why they had such surprised expressions on their faces. Sometimes, one look was all it took to know what a student was thinking. Pretending to be calm as she marked the test papers, Teacher Pan cast a sidelong glance at Super Chen and Dopigua. It was as if she had turned on a self-aiming hack, and the two of them trembled. Su Xiao, you don't need to collect your homework today. I'll collect all of it myself. Hurry up and put it on the lectern. Super Chen, Dopigua, the two of them couldn't help cursing in their hearts at the same time. It was still the King early morning. 4 o'clock. Even a teacher in charge wouldn't be in the classroom until 7 o'clock during the morning self-study period. Super Chen and Dopigua instantly felt that Teacher Pan seemed a little deranged. How could there be a teacher in charge who came to school at 4 o'clock to mark homework? Teachers were paid according to the number of classes they had. Coming in early and finishing school late was considered voluntary work and didn't count as wages at all. At that moment, Super Chen and Dopigua felt that there was absolutely no need to doubt Old Pan's professionalism. Now that Old Pan was keeping an eye on them in class, copying homework was definitely out of the question. Thus, the two of them didn't say anything as they returned to their seats and started to make up on their homework. Teacher Pan saw this scene, but didn't say anything. She pretended as if she hadn't seen anything as she marked the homework. She had seen too many students of all kinds, including those who cheated in exams. It was now an era of national cultivation, especially at this kind of critical juncture. As a Golden Core teacher, She wouldn't feel tired even if she didn't sleep or rest for more than 10 days. Forget 4 o'clock, even if she stayed at school and didn't get off work, she still had to keep an eye on these students before the midterm exams and raise their grades as much as possible. After all, they were young and playful, and there were times when they were more mischievous. She definitely had to keep an eye on them. Thus, at that moment, Teacher Pan suddenly thought of someone. She felt that Wang Ling in class really seemed like a pretty good kid. His grades were always so-so, but in any case, he was an honest person. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.